Start it. Everybody's screen working properly?
Yeah.
Is everybody's mic on?
Well, let's see. That's a good question.
Yeah, I think it is now.
Now it is.
Okay. Thank
Your
you.
mic.
No.
All right.
Let's see. There we go. Okay, well, let's go ahead and call her to order then. And let's see, we've already discussed the quorum, and we do have one. And do we have any public comments on non-agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to our first item for discussion, which is a vote item, and that's the Heritage Tree nomination for the Edward Howell House. What's the name of that school right across the street?
Barkley.
Barkley?
Barkley.
Community
Barkley.
School.
Yeah.
Okay, it's right across the street from that. It's a larger fir. What was it, 39 inches thick?
39, and I
Yeah.
measured it in the field, and it was right at 39 inches.
Okay,
Wow.
good.
It looks really well taken care of, too. It's been pruned, I would say about 20 feet up to the lowest branch.
Yeah,
Has a height of approximately 100 feet, I think, but I wasn't able to verify a height. The spread based on aerial photography is around 35 to 40 feet, so it overlaps the adjacent property, but the trunk and the tree is squarely on the property of 712 12th Street. And Mayor Neely has nominated this tree for Heritage Tree designation. We did a little bit of research. First, we looked at the actual McLaughlin Conservation District historic inventory form for the house and the property. And so the house is very important. It is on that lot that was the home of Edward McLean Howell, the son of Dr. Squire Davis and Martha Howell, who crossed the plains in 1870 and was originally a conductor for East Side Railroad Company, which ran the trolleys into Oregon City. And it's Queen Anne style, one of the best preserved homes of that architecture in the city, and one which clearly shows the East Lake influence, due no doubt to the plans being sent away from back east. On the tree nomination form, Mayor Neely explained that the tree is at least as old or older than the house. And when we looked at the inventory form in a little more detail, because they usually have some mention of landscape features, it's usually very rudimentary. They did not mention the tree specifically, but they did mention that there was a heavily landscaped rear yard in 1982. I took photos of the tree 2 days ago, so it was a pretty dark day, and the photos are kind of dark, but the photos that Mayor Neely attached to the application are taken during some sunnier weather and show pretty well what condition the tree is in. It's well viewable. It's viewable from the public right-of-way, both from Barkley Park and from the sidewalk, as well as from nearby street. So that's nice, and there aren't too many trees like it around, except in Barkley Park itself, where there's several trees that are similar height.
Is Barkley a city park, or is it attached to the school?
It's a community school.
I think it's part of the school, but
Okay.
I don't know for sure. Yeah. So when we look at the review criteria, now this is based on the current adopted code, not the review criteria that the NRC has approved revisions for. So this is, but it certainly met all of those conditions, those criteria. Due to its association with the Howell House and the property in the Conservation District, and it is of landmark importance to the city of Oregon City. It is listed on the eligible list of trees in our heritage tree code. It is not listed as a state heritage tree. It's not irreparably damaged, diseased, hazardous, or unsafe. And the applicant is willing to have the tree treated by an arborist to alleviate any damage, disease, or hazards. So if the NRC comes to a approval on this, then the nomination will be forwarded to the City Commission at their next available meeting. And if they approve the nomination, we will record a restrictive protective covenant for the tree, which will run with the land, and will provide a plaque describing the name, the species of the tree, and the approximate age, but I don't know what the approximate age will be. We can kind of use the house as a guide. And then list the tree on the city's heritage tree list and website. So we concur that it meets the applicable criteria for designation as a heritage tree and wholeheartedly endorse the nomination. Staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a voluntary situation, of course,
Yes.
which we like to see.
Yes, it's on private
And
property.
it's plenty big enough as far as the tree. It's got a nice sinuous trunk I noticed in the pictures, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure if it's older than the house or not because those things grow so darn fast. But ones of the age of the city are quite a bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a couple of feet bigger, in fact. But there isn't very many of those around. So I see no problem with it.
I had one, I guess, subsidiary question. Via our earlier meeting, we had talked about the cost of the plaque and whether or not, I guess in some circumstances, it might be a bit of a burden upon the property owner if they had to fork over the money for the plaque.
Well, currently the city pays for them.
All of them?
Yeah.
All of them, okay,
Yeah.
because one time I had heard that the property owner was going to be charged for them.
Well, I think that option exists in the code, but, we just don't get too many of the nominations, and to date, we've been willing to handle the cost.
Okay.
We get them from Canby Trophy, and they also provide the stakes that you can mount them on, but some people prefer to mount them some other way. So, so far, it's not really an issue for the city. Yeah, I'm looking at these photos, and it certainly does have a sinuous kind of bark pattern on the side.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to the tree as it was growing, but
Yeah.
my place in Tualatin, the crows would land on the leader and bend them over. So I called it crow top disease. Maybe that's what it is.
I hope not.
Sure. Sure.
It's got a very nice full crown. And
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it looks very healthy. I see no sign of decline in it. And that's what you want to see because, sometimes Douglas fir do have problems.
Right. Yeah, on the ground around the tree, it's not constrained. There are no structures down below the canopy other than the garden itself, which is nice. So.
Okay. Well,
Would you like to?
I think we should get a motion.
I'll move.
Good.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved.
Who moved it?
Bob Roth and Jerry Herman seconded.
Okay.
And is there any further discussion? Okay, well, hearing none, in the spirit of consensus, I'm going to consider this one passed.
All right. Thank you. We'll get that on the agenda. Probably not for February 5th, but the next meeting. Oh, yeah, we can get it on the agenda for February 5th for the City Commission.
Okay, good enough.
Okay.
Anything to make Doug happy, right?
We can say that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he likes a good joke. So.
I hope he's watching. All right. So next item, item 3B.
Okay.
is a preliminary discussion about goal setting and priorities. I'll direct you to my staff report and introduce Carol. Oh, one moment. Having some screen issues. So, as we know, our bylaws, which are part of our the resolution that guides the functioning of the Natural Resources Committee, includes bylaws with a broad scope of work and a variety of tasks and responsibilities for the NRC. And throughout the year, we've struggled with that scope of work as to how much oversight the NRC has and those sorts of things. What we know is that the NRC as an advisory body is responsible for a yearly meeting with the Parks and Recreation and Advisory Committee, and is advisory to the PRAC and the Planning Commission and the City Commission. Carol Kamhus, who is a renowned Oregon City educator, community leader, and facilitator of the first city visioning process in 2000, has graciously offered to assist the NRC with our discussion. So this would be a fairly informal preliminary discussion for this meeting, and I think we're going to be continuing this into future meetings in February. The issue summary that was prepared by Jerry and Brian and some of you outlines prior, current, and ongoing concerns that NRC members have regarding their role, and in particular, the need for improved communication between this committee and various city departments is a major concern, particularly with respect to how those departments interact with natural resources in the city. I would allow you and Brian to talk a little bit about this, or ask you to talk about this, and then we can have Carol come up and we'll kick it off as a discussion. Yep.
Shouldn't we explain that we met with Carol to kind
Yeah.
of discuss a concept?
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good thing.
Yeah.
When was
Because
this
that didn't
meeting?
involve all these committee members.
Right. So there was a meeting at Carol's house when was that?
Monday,
Monday.
Monday the 30th.
Right.
Was
So
everybody invited?
No, because
No.
then we
We
would
would
have
have
to
more than a quorum.
film it and put it on the TV and all
Right.
that.
Right.
So it was less than a.
and we didn't arrive at any discussions. We had a very preliminary discussion, which is why we're having this
I
discussion.
think I'd like to back
here.
up for just a
Yeah.
minute, and that is Shaw had been attempting to try to get a facilitator to help us
Yeah.
through a quasi-governmental type of advisory group, and nothing happened. So I knew Carol from the past when she helped us with the visioning process for Oregon City in 92, sorry, 2002, when was it? Okay, all right. John Williams was mayor then.
Carol, do
So-
you want to come up and?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So what we did was talked about our incorporation document that put us into business, and then tried to figure out what we could do to come to some more focus and more effectiveness. Okay.
Yeah. So, Jerry, in the NRC issue summary, I think we could probably go through this since it kind of helps frame the issue for the NRC. Do you want to go through that, or do you want me to go through that? Yeah.
I'd be happy to if you
Yeah,
want.
okay.
The document I have is my paper version. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm having eye problems. The screen's.
Yeah, I
wrong, okay?
understand.
All right. All right. Ryan and I met, and Richard, we talked about some of these issues several months ago. We've kind of had we were founded in 2002 as an organization, and Shaw and myself and a few others were the ones that founded the Natural Resource Committee function as a concept. Then the city approved it, and John Williams established it, and then Alice Norris put it into being as an ordinance-approved organization. And we've kind of been trying to define our role. We had a very broad role, which, if you look at the goals for the at the founding time, were very broad. About 11 different things that we, in theory, were going to work on. 14 to be exact, I guess. And in this whole process, it's been kind of unclear whether we were looking at projects or we're looking at policy or what are we really doing here. And I know that Richard, and I talked to Richard today, he's in Oklahoma, has always felt it'd be nice if we looked at projects from time to time. And occasionally the city has sent us projects to look at. We went away about 5 years ago, is that not true? Something like that?
I think it's more than that. According to this article, anyway, it says 2006 is about the time it's disbanded, which is...
Okay, well, that would be 7 years ago then.
Yeah, 7.
Okay, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And were reformed just 3 years ago because of Mayor Neely's interest and such. And we've been primarily working on the tree ordinance. That's one thing that we inherited, so to speak, and worked on that. We've given input on a few projects. We've made some recommendations regarding issues like Waterboard Park and groves within Waterboard Park and the overall aspect of what was being done there. We actually made a recommendation to go to the City Commission with a particular recommendation from this body, and the staff to this group, I believe it was Tony, went to the City Commission and presented his case, and we weren't quite aware of, I think, of what was happening. So there's been some confusion along the way. And I think what we're really trying to do is figure out, one, is it a result of too much to do and not enough focus, or is it because we don't quite know who to relate to? And Brian has graciously gone to the PrAC meeting at least once to represent us there, I believe. And prior to his time, our previous chairman, a lady, she attended a PrAC meeting. I was there with her too. So the continuing issues that we kind of looked at was we don't quite know what's happening on some natural resource issues until they happen. Case in point, a lot of trees get cut down. That's one issue. Okay, we review and comment things quite often as they're presented to us, but we're not necessarily interacting to find out about projects that we could interact on. I'm just going through my notes here.
Could I add one thing to
Sure.
that? I think one of the things is there's a time where people kind of bring you in a done deal and they're basically looking for a sign-off on
Yep.
a decision that's already been made, or there could be an opportunity to actually provide constructive input when there's still room for decisions to be made or incorporate the feedback. But if you're brought into the process when everything's basically finalized and you're just supposed to sign off on it, it doesn't feel productive as a citizen volunteer. And also you don't quite feel like this process is being taken seriously if you're not really having a chance to put input in until, after the trees are cut down or other processes.
Sure. I agree with what you just said. Our bylaws are specific, though, to do certain things. We're supposed to meet annually with the Parks and Rec Board. We have not always done that. We're also supposed to convey information to the City Commission, who's our party that we're really responsible to. We're supposed to review projects that come before us that would relate to our charge, and I'm not quite sure what those projects are, even myself. And even if those projects may be only required for staff review, I think one of the things is we'd kind of like to be kept in the loop if they're a major magnitude, 700-800 trees to be removed as an example. We'd kind of like to know about that kind of thing. But okay, we wish to be in the loop is really what it comes down to. That's what Richard in particular talked about, instead of kind of playing catch up. And when we make recommendations as a recommending body, that's all we are, is a recommending body, we'd like to have those recommendations passed on forward, even if, for instance, staff within this particular area that we are relating to right now might not agree with us. We'd still like to have them passed on for the body who's supposed to react to us, the City Commission, to make a decision. I think that's one of the things that we've kind of felt is important. Overall, the majority of us have, and I think this maybe phrases a little bit of what you're saying too, Bob, is that the natural resource values of the city, they're kind of a legacy. The history of what's here is what's here been here for quite some time. and it's in a state of transition, growth, and removal in some cases, and just natural attrition. Things die. One way or the other, we're really, at least myself, Shaw, I believe, and I think Richard, and I think Brian too, maybe all of us, generally think that it'd be nice to, where we can, preserve the legacy that's here, where we can, and work to try to integrate it, versus having major changes occur if they can be avoided. I'm saying if they can be avoided. Sometimes they can't be. So that was what the two-page thing we put together. Was that in people's packets today?
Yes.
See? Okay, all right. That's just a quick summary. So that's why we met with Carol in part, was what do we do?
Well, you know, I think there's a different way of looking at it, too. It's kind of a push-pull thing. Mayor Neely came in and spoke to us kind of about how, they saw our role or something like that, but I don't sense there's a communication exchange where we're able to kind of talk to them about, I guess we're on this because we have some interest or expertise in environmental issues, natural resource concerns, but there doesn't seem to be kind of a two-way communication of what we believe the city should be concerned with, and them kind of getting back to us. It's kind of a one-way communication of being told, this is the priorities, or this is what you should be concerned with, instead of a two-way dialogue.
And if I could just chime in there, the city commission has their goal setting on a biannual basis now, and ideally the goal setting that they do would be informed by all other advisory committees at the beginning of the goal setting process, that which we're in the we're not doing it right now. They're doing an interim review of the goals they adopted last year. So at the time to adopt new goals, particularly natural resources goals at the city commission level, is going to be at the next year in 2015. But at the same time, Bob's absolutely right that they would like a more efficient way to make their concerns known to the city commission. And one of the ways that we have discussed doing that in the past is to sort of have a formal recommendation process where after it's been deliberated and agreed to by this committee, we write whatever the recommendation is down and then sign off on it with the chair and co-chair, and sort of relate it back to the existing bylaw on hand, and then send that up at whatever meeting. That's one idea that we have. So we haven't followed through on that. Yeah, but it's one idea. Mm-hmm. Good.
I guess I've got to ask, is it okay if I comment here?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd say that's more than one idea. I'd say that's exactly the obvious solution to that particular problem. To the degree the advisory committee feels and you and the staff feel that you want a more structured approach, well then
I think
it seems
that's
fairly
what I'm
obvious
driving
to
at,
me
is a more structured approach.
Prepare a formal recommendation, whatever form that takes. Clearly it needs to be written, but a formal recommendation from the committee, and then it becomes part of the package of documents that go forward for review and approval with a proposed action.
And if we did have a more structured approach like that, it would become part of a record, a permanent record.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm not even seeing the argument for why you would not want to do that myself.
It's
that's why I say. It seems to me like that would be the clear approach to deal with a more formal structure for making recommendations and having them, treated seriously in the process.
It would require quorum in order to make that recommendation.
As always.
Yeah, as always. Either through consensus or vote. And then it would probably need to be noticed with sufficient time for somebody to comment on it.
Yes.
Not the same as we do planning commission, since you're an advisory body rather than a quasi-judicial decision-making body, but at the same time with sufficient notice to provide members of the public time to comment on that
Sure.
forthcoming recommendation.
Which is
Yeah.
something we've tried to do anyway.
Right. So, yeah, I'm advocating for a more structured approach.
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that kind of would lead me to the other half of what I was thinking, which is what are the actions that require some formal review or some formal recommendation? I mean, in a way, it seems not very focused to just say we feel like we're out of the loop and not consulted sometimes. I mean, I'd like to go the next step and say we all ought to have the same understanding of when we are in the loop and when we are consulted. And that is to say, I mean, if there are policy actions by the city that are under consideration, I would think it would be the normal practice, if those affect natural resource issues, that we would be asked for our review and recommendations. And then there must be some class of projects or actions that we could define somehow, that it would be the normal procedure again to bring them to us and ask for our review and recommendations. I mean, it seems like if you had those things, you're most of the way there.
Right. And I think the devil's in the details, and when it boils down to codes and policies, it's important for there to be two-way communication as to which of our codes and policies affect natural resources.
Yes.
And when we're tweaking them, you need to know early
That's right.
so that you can comment.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
part of what we need to accomplish is having some sort of document for staff to spell out those times when they need to refer things to us early in the going.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problems that isn't there. It's like, with the Clackamas River Basin Council, there's the issue of the railroad, new bridge over the Clackamas. No one's notified us because ODOT doesn't know that we need to be notified. And we've got to do the same thing with city staff so that they know when is it appropriate, when is it doesn't need to happen, and get that spelled out in some way.
Yeah. And just for Carol's edification, when we talk about projects, it kind of means a lot of different things. I think there are projects that deal with land use issues that are under review, and then there are projects where the Public Works Department is building something that was approved a long time ago but now has funding, and they're doing it in the right-of-way, and so it seems as if there's no notification going on, but it was done so long ago. So that's a different type of issue. Then you've got projects which are multiple agencies, like this one that Brian's referring to.
Yeah.
And then you have projects where you're reviewing new policies, like the Heritage Tree Code that the NRC reviewed and approved this year. And that's like a policy update project, right? So, yeah, we need to be clear when we talk about projects. Yeah.
If I could add something, though, in that kind of project sense. It seems like there's two things. There's capacity building, which is kind of developing the committee's internal capacity to deal with things coming up, in addition to things happening out in the community. I'm concerned about when you look at stuff like, even though things have been delayed over at the Blue Heron site, that somewhere down the line, committee members are going to be asked to really get in depth and really look at some stuff, but I haven't really seen the city's commitment to ensure that we have the information and the training and the preparation in order to prepare effectively in advance to when those decisions will come forth. Because, I mean, that's a huge ball of wax, a really important responsibility, and we need to be informed and prepared to deal with stuff at that level, particularly when we only meet once a month.
Can I go ahead and say something? Yeah.
Please do.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you for allowing
Thank
me
you.
to. I didn't even know there was a. I did know that there was a natural resource committee because of the city planning, but I didn't know what had happened to it really. And so I want to thank all of you for taking your time. I know what it means to be a volunteer, and thank you for taking your time to make this is important to our city. My name, as you know, is Carol Kimmis. I've lived in Oregon City for 48 years, I think it is. I love this city. My kids were born here and went to school here, and so it's very important to me. And I trust committees like this committee to take care of those issues that I really don't have a clue what's going on. I was asked by Jerry to just kind of come in and kind of hear you, what you want, and what are some of your concerns maybe with not so much the projects, but how can you be heard, and how can this be a viable, productive committee, so you're not wasting your time, and you're not wasting the city's time, and something's coming of it. So I did ask, I wasn't sure what that meant, what really the role that I was to play. So that's why we did meet. I invited everybody to my house to say, okay, now what is it you're looking for? And so really that meeting was just to kind of go over, give me some idea of the Natural Resource Committee and kind of educate me. Once we got to a point with, oh, okay, now I'm hearing some of the issues, then we said, let's stop this meeting because it really needs to be a committee meeting now. And so that's where we got.
Thank
That's
you.
where we are today. So there was absolutely no decisions made because you are a committee and we need everybody's input and voice. What I heard though, and I heard it again from tonight, is that some of your concerns. And can I go ahead and read what I wrote on my, and you tell me, yeah, that is, or no, it's not, or because we really want this to be a total committee voice. One is process. Yes, that you want to understand the process, and you want everyone that you work with to understand the process. You want to communication. And in that communication, you want to be trusted, as you want to trust the other organizations that you're working with. You want to be informed, and that's also part of that process. Respected, heard, and in a timely manner. So often what I like to do is give a thumbs up means yes, that is. Here to the side is I'm not sure, more information, or no, that's not how we feel at all. So if you wouldn't mind if I could just take a little poll, when I say communication and I read those trust, respect, heard, timely manner, informed, and process, would you think that is a fair, how you feel? Questions or?
The only thing I had to add to that is I think it's a little bit, I'm sorry, did you?
That's all right.
Okay, no, that's okay.
No. The
My main vision.
the main thing is that's kind of a general statement, and I think it's stronger if we're talking laterally, we're talking about like other departments or decision. It's not that I disagree with it, but when it's phrased in that way, it's kind of hard to know what you're saying matches.
Sure, okay.
We're thinking,
and there's more to come,
Yeah.
and I'll help you a little bit to where we're going to go with this. So this is kind of the foundation. This isn't you're right, and great question, Mr. Roth. This isn't the whole who you are. This is just a layer of a foundation of what you would like to be viewed as.
Sure. Okay.
And
So-
I do have to comment that when communication occurs, it can be just fine, but the problem is when it doesn't occur, and that we're left out of the loop or whatever, and we may feel any of the other things when that doesn't happen.
Right, and part of communication though is happening, means it is forward moving. If it's not happening, then it's not communication.
Right.
So is that a thumbs up so far? Do you
Yeah.
agree? And nothing's written in stone. This just because you put a thumbs up doesn't mean that we're stuck on that.
Did I hear you say process yet?
Process, yes.
Is that one of the ones you're looking at?
That is process. Yes, I did
Are
say
you asking for a
process.
thumbs up now, or was that assumed?
That no,
Okay.
but process actually is what we were. Part of that communication is wanting a process.
Okay, well,
Is that a
that's
thumbs
part
up,
of
Mr.
communication.
Yard?
I
I think
meant.
so.
Okay,
I
okay.
got to say, I'm hesitating a little because,
Okay.
I mean, what the things you're talking about right now are all things we'd like. And
Right.
yes, indeed, we would.
Okay,
Sure.
okay.
But I wouldn't want to mislead you. I mean, I think all of us appreciate that we're an advisory group and we're here to give a service to the city. So yes, there's some things we'd like to have, but that's part of a deal where we have some obligations and
Right.
we produce some things too.
Agreed.
Right.
So it isn't
Definitely.
just one side of it that's important.
Definitely.
Well, what I heard you say about process, Carol, was that we understand the process and that others understand the process so we can be effective. That's
And-
not exactly a communication thing.
Right, and part of this where we're going is what is that we need to do to make this happen? That's where we're going
Okay.
to.
But-
This is what I heard again today. I heard this again is that you want to have a voice, you want it to have meaning, and definitely, as Mr. Walter shared, we have to go through the policies and codes. That's there. Now, if you want to change some of those codes, that's another issue, and that's fine. But if there's already a code that has been adopted, then we have to honor that code unless there's a process to question that code. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And that was our next one, actually, is we want to concentrate on policies and codes, is what I've been hearing too.
Backtracking on that process, I think you can have a process, but the important part is to get everybody to commit to follow the process. I mean, you can say, here's this tree cut notification, but if somebody goes in, whacks them all down, and doesn't follow the process, it's kind of meaningless.
And so if we agree that this is something we want to put on, then we're going to need to do some kind of an action plan and put up, what we talked about is coming up with a mission statement and what this community is, or committees, goals and objectives, and then guiding principles. And all that would be in there. And then the action plan or the activity would be how are we going to educate the other committees that we work with? How are we going to build that relationship with them so they understand who we are and we understand who they are and what are our roles? That's the whole outline but before we can get to that point, we have to know who are we and what do we really want.
All right.
So going forward a little bit, is everybody with me? Doesn't mean we're there yet, but does it follow where I'm going so far?
You're just trying to do an inventory of our
Right.
situation.
Right. And I don't want any
Situational.
surprises. If something that I'm saying is like a, whoa, where did she come from? The moon? That's when I want to know, whoa.
All right.
Feed me that now.
Yeah.
But to concentrate on policy and code, so knowing what that is and knowing the process of that too. Also, having a clear understanding of how that code works and what are the resources. Because we can't ask, what I was hearing, can't ask for something done if there's no resources. But what are the resources, and then what is expected and what is reasonable. And so with that, is that something you want? Is that something you want to have a mission statement and goals and?
Oh, we have a mission statement.
Well, we have.
We have this. I was given this, and it was pretty broad,
There's three.
Very broad.
and and there was a lot of stuff on here. And so when I went through it, I'm like, wow, how can you do all this, and what does it mean?
Right.
And so that's one of the things that we'd like to do as the committee. That's where we needed to stop when we met. We needed as a committee to come together and say, what if you look at this sheet? What is it that is really important to you as a
At
community?
the bottom of,
Yeah, that's what.
Does everyone have this sheet?
Does
it's
everyone
right.
have this? It says,
yeah, right there.
Yeah, this is
Natural
the
resource- the
scope of
duties.
activities.
Yeah, starts
Yeah.
at the bottom of page 1 in the 1 of 5 document.
Yeah, within our bylaws, it's on page 1, and I think you have an
starts-
excerpt, and so it's the same.
So-
She has
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
14 goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, our 14 goals.
which it would be a lot to do. If I was another committee and I saw this, I wouldn't quite be sure, wouldn't know what you really do because it's so broad.
Right.
So
Okay.
one of the activities that we can have, and we wouldn't have to do this tonight, but just a suggestion at some point when everybody's here, is going through and seeing what is it that you as a committee really want to make a priority. Coming up with, 2 or 3 that would really be a priority that you could focus on. Doesn't mean that the others go away. Some of them could be blended in together. Some of them might be under an activity or under, part of your mission statement, but it doesn't mean it is a goal.
Do you mean priority the same way you mean concentration areas?
Yes.
Okay, because you alluded to policy and codes, that's in the 14 points here, but that's not the only thing in there.
Right.
So the concentration areas are the real priority areas we want to focus on.
So if
To you is the same thing as the concentration areas. Is that-
Right.
Okay,
And so
thank you.
let's say one thing I heard you saying that when there's new development or there is new projects, that you want to be a part of that and you want to have a part in review. I'm not sure. I'm just asking you, review, or then you would make that a priority of one of your goals, and then with that we would then educate the city and what that looks like. And of course we have to work, we have to dance with the city, and we need to dance with all of the players to see what could they live with too. We don't want to ask for something that is not realistic.
All right.
No, but I think that does get back to everybody understanding the ground rules right from the get-go. I mean, I accept right now that if the city wanted our review and input on a particular project, they would certainly bring it to us. I don't think that's the issue. The real issue is there some understanding in advance the kinds of projects that would routinely be brought to us, and I'm not so sure there is.
Well,
Which kind of tells me that all comes down to then, can you define some classes of projects that would normally or routinely be brought to us, that we could normally expect?
And a
we would be
suggestion
briefed
would
on?
be is that the committee works together and come up with what that would be, come up with the mission statement that you all agree with and your goals that you could concentrate on, and what guides you, those guiding principles, and then come up with a one-page. And it's your work, you do it, then it'll probably would take 3 or 4 different times to be wordsmithed, and after you think about it, oh, that's not what I really meant. And then when you came up with that, that's when we would go to Mr. Walter and Mr. Conkle, or those that need to be to the next step, and then to the commission. And when everybody, if everybody put their seal on it, then this is a living document then that we would need to go then to all of those individuals or those committees and then say, this is who we are, this is what we would like, and this is, we would like, this is where the trust comes in, this is where that respect comes in, because now after you've been really clear on what it looks like and there's a project that doesn't come to you, then we have something we can say, we didn't follow our structure.
I'm going to use an example here for Doug. Okay, for 5 out of 7 years, Brian and I, and I think even us lately, Bob included, have had an interest in Clackamas Cove. We've kind of shepherded it and tried to move it in directions that were more oriented towards preserving where we could and enhancing the habitat values. And the project is now ready for approval, has been approved to be moved on once final legal looks have been taken at the document that will allow them to move forward. I do not know to this day whether the things we were concerned about are still a part of that project. I don't know that. And it's 5 years of my life fooling around with this thing, trying to encourage a process that would steward the thing. And it doesn't make any difference whether you brought it to me to begin with. It wasn't brought to us. We was kind of keen about that we got involved in it. But what now has that effort culminated in? Hopefully in something. I believe in that project. I believe in that project. I believe in the developers. I'm not sure that I know the things that we worked hard to convince people, Brian, in particular with Fish and Wildlife, are there. I don't know.
Well, land use approvals expire after 2 years unless you pull a permit to build them. So some of these things have to be resubmitted for review, and then that's the appropriate time to see, is it still adhering to the.
So my question would be,
Yeah.
is that a project we would look at? I'm just talking about process now. Is that a
Yes.
project we'd look at
Yeah.
again? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, because when they have to pull a grading permit and those sorts of things, they have to be resubmitted because they've expired. and those sorts of things.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, prior to that, yeah.
And I
No,
think-
that's very specific. Yeah.
Just,
Mm.
Mr. Walter, when you said, I think so, that
Yeah.
tells us that
Right.
you have some work to do as a committee that everyone knows. Instead of saying, I think so, and I understand because you're not quite sure.
Yeah.
It sounds like it should, but if you got real strong on what your role is, then people would say, oh, we got to send it to the
Right.
Natural Resource Committee. You know, not have to think about it. It's just a process. That's
Yeah.
going to take some time to do.
Because
to
there's
get
an
there.
overarching master plan, which is a very long-term approval, and then individual sections of that project get reviewed on that 2-year timeline kind of thing, and some of those have expired. So the overall master plan is still good, and I believe the most recent phase, which is the apartments phase, is still good, but some of the other phases need to be resubmitted and reviewed again, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
ask Randy Tyler, the developer,
Yeah.
on this subject, and
Yeah.
specifically if the agreements they had made to approach the landscaping in a certain way with Fish and Game personnel was still in
Right.
force, and he said yes.
Yeah, right,
So
okay,
hopefully that part of it at least is there.
right, yeah.
But when you and I looked through the DDA, we didn't see any reference to it either, did we?
No, but that doesn't have the plans per se.
Okay.
Right,
I'm
the
just-
land use
I'm just
approval
talking.
and the development agreement are actually kind of separate things, yeah.
Pete, something would be kind of helpful in a way because I participated in that.
Let's
South-
not get off track on
No,
this project.
No. But this is the whole thing. One of the things is when you look at kind of like you're participating in that South End expansion, there's kind of a schedule, there's a process, there's a known time for committee involvement and participation. But what would be really helpful is when you look at blocks of things happening like Clackamet Clove, like Blue Heron or whatever, if there is some way even look at a multi-year process that committee members are likely to be involved in master planning for this during this period, and there's a way to look out because we're dealing with immediate stuff. We have residents coming in. We've got our stuff, but it's just a way of pacing and being kind of aware or making sure that we're prepared and have the information to participate when it's finally time to interact on a topic. But it doesn't feel like I don't know, maybe Jerry has an idea exactly when would we be engaged in Clackamet Cove again?
Well, it's
the
important to make
permits
the
are full.
distinction between land use review process, which is governed by timelines and state law. Once an application is submitted, the city has to review it and make a decision within 120 days. And then once that decision is made, then it's good for 2 years. And you can get, but when you're talking about long-range planning like South End Concept Plan, which is for an area of 400 acres, which is going to be slowly annexed into the city over a 20-year, 30-year period. We have the advisory team that was set up for that process and then a different type of timeline for that. And you're a liaison for the NRC on that committee. So that's kind of what we say, well, that's how the committee's involved.
Right, I'm thinking of something like Blue Heron. I don't know if members here have a sense of when we might be involved at
Right.
what stage. And
Okay.
Yeah, I think Blue Heron's probably the best example I could
Right.
pull.
And, so the public process for Blue Heron, I'm going to talk about in a little bit here.
Okay.
Provide an update on that. Yeah.
Well, and I'm going to say something here. I watched Carol at work when the visioning process was going on many years ago, and all these 14 or 15 groups that had different things that they wanted to do. You were trying to kind of shepherd them together and get them all working on general focus areas that were their specialty, but we had an overall mission statement we developed. It's a preamble for the city's comp plan, which was written as a part of that. And I feel what she brings to us here is an opportunity to look at the bigger picture and then focus back in on the areas that we should focus on. And if the mission statement's an important issue, I agree it is. I don't see a mission statement for this group. I see items 1, 2, and 3, which are general areas of activity, review, quality, and coordination of ecological, geological, my gosh, it goes on and on. Assist the city in developing, implementing policies. And then 3, encourage conservation of natural resources. I see 3 very broad areas there, then 14 more things there. So if to help you be efficient with your time, which you're donating, I think we need to get busy and figure out what that mission statement could look like, and come back to the focus areas that we'd like to select out of the 14 that we have and combine them. I don't know. In order to keep the process moving, I'll tell you what my dream was with Carol's involvement, and she did it with over 100 people showed up at those visioning meetings, 50 to 60 at a time, was that there was involvement with distinct groups, like our group. Then she allowed others to have input into the process to give specific comments on, say, an enhancement and cleanup effort for the city, or the history and heritage interests of the city. And I'd like to see the public at one of these meetings, her facilitating our final development of these things that we've worked on, and the public involved in here too. I don't know whether you see it that way, but that was my dream, was that the public could have a little ownership here too.
Well, and I don't see my role as having really an opinion. I see my role as helping your opinions come, to a plan. And so I can guide you, dear, through that, and take what I hear you saying and put it, together as what I think needs to happen to get to that next step. Because I'm not a part of this committee, and I don't really have a vested interest in this committee per se, but I do in the city, and I love the city, as I mentioned earlier, and I think this is an important committee. So what I'm willing to do if this is something you feel as a committee member that you need, and it really has to be a full committee that wants to do this. If 4 people want to do it and 1 doesn't, it's probably not going to get very far. It has to be where everyone feels that we need to be more structured, have a focus, and we want to come together and make sure our voice as the committee is heard, and this is what we feel we can do. I think we could do it in an hour. If we sat down and really came to the table, committed to really work, I think seriously it wouldn't take that long. A little homework is that you would take this sheet or your bylaws, and before you come to the meeting, kind of have an idea what's important to you. What is it that you feel you stand for, and what is it you want from? I've already heard, from just about everybody, and I have heard some similar threads, but really, for you have time to think about it.
Mm-hmm. Carol, can I ask a question? From a timing perspective, we have we have vacancies on our committee, and we have applicants who have applied, and that we're keeping our application period open till February 3rd, with a view towards the whole committee interviewing the prospective members at the February meeting.
And how many seats are you?
7.
7, and you have 5 now.
Right.
6.
Well,
6.
my term's up. I
Yeah,
reapplied.
but you can serve until you're re-upped.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yep,
Okay.
yep.
How many
confirmed
new
that
people
today.
could be on then?
2, possibly, if I wasn't
Possibly
reappointed.
2. I mean, he's running against the applicants still, so. Yeah. Mhm.
One is not here. He resigned. Vacancy for about 5 months.
Okay.
Yep.
So what I hear you saying is, should we wait?
Yeah.
I would say yes. I would say, since you're doing it from the ground up, and this is going to be, you want it to be organic, you want it to really be authentic, I would wait till you have your whole committee, and then come together with that.
Yeah, I basically agree with that. We need to get the whole committee, which is sometimes hard to do to get every last person here, but it does happen. But at the same time, we will need to send this document to the missing people that aren't here now, and new people and so on. Would not hurt us to review it quickly tonight.
Right.
And get some idea what does this thing really mean as far as workload and our available time. We only meet once a month, and
And this might be a special meeting if you wanted to, if you're
That's
willing.
possible.
And that would be the focus of the meeting, is to come up with, who you are. And I really do believe if everybody comes prepared, it shouldn't take that long.
Yeah, I'm sure that Richard would do an adequate job of preparing. And of course,
Absolutely.
we have new members coming in.
He's watching us right now.
Yep, he said he would be watching.
In
us.
Oklahoma.
Hi, Richard.
So in our bylaws under organizational procedures, which is Article 6, Section 4, it talks about how we'll review and assess our activities and actions of the preceding year and then set goals for the present year. Ostensibly, that's something that we do at the beginning of each calendar year, and we're a little behind right now. But that's okay, because we have open vacancies and that sort of thing. So, and I think what we're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're not talking about a work plan necessarily. We're talking about something different.
More structure. We're
Yeah.
talking about who you are.
Yeah.
You know, what is it you do? Now, out of that structure then would come an action plan.
Okay.
But this is kind of more of the foundation of when we make a decision, what is it based on? Why, how do we get to that decision?
Yeah. And I think what I heard Doug allude to too is that we need some clearer guides which define the thresholds for projects and what those thresholds are for NRC review and comment. And to me, because I work closely with codes and projects daily, I think very specifically. I'm thinking any project that removes a certain number of trees, for example, or any project that's a wetland, obviously, any stream type thing. But it potentially affects other departments like the Public Works Department or the Parks Department, because they do things that they consider routine maintenance, which this committee may not consider routine. That needs to be either advise and consent or some sort of a protocol.
And that would go under then looking for the, really knowing the codes and policies, but
Right.
then clear
And then
understanding
of decision making.
and what that looks like.
Yeah, because we have different types of decision making spelled out in our land use code, but then that just deals with land use.
And part of that would be, it sounds like an education for this committee also, to know, well, what is our role? I mean, that's what I heard you saying. What is our role? Is that our role, or is that not our role? Because if it's our role, we're willing to take that on. If it's not, we don't want to step into something that's not our responsibility. Is that a
Yep.
fair?
Okay.
Do you know, if there's one thing I'd add, I'm just kind of looking through Article 7, and I think, as Brian alluded to, we meet once a month, hopefully usually not for more than 2.5, 3 hours at the most, and there's a finite amount of stuff that can get done during that time, and it seems like there's a threshold of organizations that have subcommittees and people who aren't necessarily on the committee but have expertise or willingness and energy to get involved, and organizations only work by full committee. And if there was a real commitment to identify 2 or 3 functioning subcommittees to get established where work could be done, could be a Clackamas Cove subcommittee, it could be nighttime lighting, climate change, whatever it is, but it'd be an opportunity for more people to get involved who maybe weren't formally nominated for this committee, but it'd be a chance to do a lot of work in between meetings. It could be a project, restoration project, whatever, but it seems like there'd be a whole lot more things. We could have more capacity, get more done if we had functioning subcommittees.
And I would think, that would be something, Mr. Walters, that the city would have.
Yeah,
That
I
would be
think
a-
Well, we've got
there's
provisions in here.
Yeah, we have provisions within our committee to create subcommittees.
Right. And we have a
they
stand.
can
standing.
create it, but there's a lot of recruitment that needs
Right,
to happen.
exactly.
Right,
And then
which the city
that goes
helps
on the
with.
city website
Right.
and then advertisement and that
See,
sort
then
of
if
thing.
that was one of your goals, and that was important, then that would be what you would put down then in your goals. This is our goal, is to have subcommittees or working on projects or whatever it is. And that would be, so then that's where your energy of this committee would go to making that happen.
Yeah.
When you have 12 that's a full-time job for all of you, and I don't think that that's what your understanding of this committee was when you meet once a week. You have so many, as I was looking at, so many goals. I don't know how you can really put a lot of attention into all of them. So when you decide what is it really, now next year, you might come up with 3 this year, and you meet those, and you feel really good about those. Next year, when you have, probably not to the extent that we're looking at, but when you have at the beginning of the year, you review your goals, you might take one off and add another one on. That you feel like, this is one that was our 4th goal, and we didn't get, didn't make it a priority this year. But number 2, we're pretty much done with that. So that is your freedom as the committee.
I'll just point out another success for this year was the amendment of the street tree list, which we accomplished that. So that was good. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of points here that need to be discussed and gone through with an eye on, what does this mean, in relation to our capacity. And that's what we need to do. And then if in that analysis we come up with areas that we want to focus on and which lend themselves to a subcommittee, then that's the point at which we would move towards that. Some things are going to come up when they come up, but where you need to develop information, then that's where a subcommittee really comes in handy. But if it's say a land use application that we need to look at, that's really for the whole committee.
Right.
So it just depends on what we decide to focus on, how much that's going to come into play. But
So, Mr. Chairman, are you asking us to look at 1 through 14?
actually, we might as well start with 1 through 3 just before that, just to get an idea of the overview.
Okay.
And how big it really shows you right there how big a undertaking this is.
Duties.
And just so we're all familiar with it. And but then we need, out of the 14, that's where we need to make our decisions, which one are we going to focus on for the coming year, let's say.
And the first 3 actually could be developed into a mission statement.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
And then the 14 could really, condensing those or adding or subtracting, 3 maybe for your goals.
3, I think, is all we should.
Seems
try
like
to
a
have.
lot
Yeah.
for the first year. And Ms. Spady said that when the team comes together, or the committee comes together, and kind of comes up with what your overview is, she would put this together. She would write it up and
Yes, she did say that.
take what came out of the committee to put it together to a 1-page.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's adopted. That just means it's a draft, and then it would come back. It's kind of like an accordion.
Yeah.
You come together and you do the work, and then you go out and do some thinking, and she works on it, and then you come back together, and then the final product would be what you take to
So
the commission.
hopefully when it comes back, we get on key and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great idea.
That's the hope.
Okay. So, the first 3 are pretty general, very general, but that's also the overall charge, whereas the 14 are specific activities to carry out that charge, which may or may not be complete. I'm not going to argue one way or the other at the moment. But in any case, they're all quite a bit, and we could just read through them, or everybody could read them independently. It doesn't really matter.
You've gone past 1, 2, and 3?
No, we're back at 1, 2, and
Okay.
3. It's review the quality and condition of the ecological, geological, aesthetic, and other natural resources of Oregon City and adjacent areas.
Yeah. My attitude is that could be simplified into a much simpler statement, I'm not saying what it is, but it could be a simpler statement.
Yeah.
What's almost that could be turned into almost a preamble or something
Yeah?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
that could precede some more specific statement of the duties and responsibilities of the committee. That's how it strikes me. I mean, I don't disagree with what's there, but it doesn't tell you a lot except that we're expected to work with natural resource issues. We're expected to work with policies and plans. We're expected to have a concern and interest in the preservation of natural resource issues in the city. Okay, I mean,
Yeah, that's
I
all.
get that, but that's kind of a preamble statement.
And my
Right,
question would
right.
be, when I read this, is so you review it, so what does that mean?
Yeah,
You just
exactly.
review it and put a star on it?
Well, yeah, let's get
You
down
know,
to some
what-
idea of what the actual duties and responsibilities of the
Yeah.
committee are.
Yeah, and that's 1 through 14. But
Oh, I don't think it is. No.
Yeah.
No, I think there's a description of the committee and what it's about, and then there's this business of assignments and tasks. I mean, 1 through 14 is somebody's list of assignments and tasks in 2002. I take it when this was written.
Correct.
Some of them are still undone and probably belong in annual work plans. Some of them are no longer maybe quite so appropriate, or they've been, they've been
They've
passed
been done.
over by time, and you'd say it differently now. A couple of them I'm not sure anybody wants us to do. Like number 2, does anybody want this committee to be the city's representative on natural resource issues to Clackamas County, to Metro, to Oregon State Extension Service? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
yeah, that's more like part of the city's job, because the city needs to coordinate with all these agencies. And why do we also need to coordinate with all these? But, and you look at the amount of work that would be just a once a year meeting with 9 different bodies, not limited to these 9 different bodies, would be a substantial amount of work. Not mentioning what's mentioned in number 1. There's, 13 neighborhood associations, an unknown amount of community organizations, several city departments that would have to be coordinated with, which is,
Yes.
we need to have contact with those, I think, with those city agencies very strongly.
Just to keep us on track a little
Yeah.
bit, we were going through the 1 through 3.
Right.
If we can go back to those and see,
What we think.
what you think,
Right.
and then we can go, 1 through 14.
Okay, well, I think 1, 2, and 3, based on what Doug suggested, they should be combined together, just the essence of them, into a preamble. I think that would be a proper way to do that.
Okay.
And that preamble really is the mission statement for this group.
Why not just have this called a mission statement and just, simplify?
Sure.
I guess what I'm trying to,
I just wish you had what was developed for the, you have that document with you?
I don't have it.
I mean, I could see that being followed by, a statement of, several specific duties that you would call duties, or whatever term of art you like better, that might follow, a statement of kind of general.
And what we can do is, I believe Ms. Beatty has that document, and we could tell her what I'm hearing is for her to start, putting in, developing a draft of these 3 with to make a preamble and to what stands for what your mission is, and have her start there. That would give us a document to start with, and then we could.
You could follow that
Follow
with some
that.
specifics. Like, I mean, just as an example to say what I was thinking anyway. I mean, Pete was talking a little while ago about this idea of a more formal review process where we prepared written recommendations and they were shared with the planning department and the commission. Well, that would be one of our duties to actually, when we're asked to review a project or a policy to prepare such a recommendation,
And everybody would know that too.
Yeah.
And so it would be a plan. We would have a plan for that and what that would look like. But that's kind of getting ahead of ourselves. The first thing is you got to make sure everybody understands what you do.
Right.
You understand what you do, and all of the agencies that you work with understand. And once we can get that developed, I think things are just going to kind of fall in place.
I was trying to break apart duties from tasks. In other words, some general statement of duties that would remain the same through the whole life of the committee as compared to tasks, which would be different every
Right.
year.
Yeah, it's like the
And then there's activities too that you're going to want to add. Maybe what I was hearing, a few things. If you have the community come together and hear, that would be an activity to hear what you do. Those kind of things. So there's a wide open space that you can.
Well, maybe one way to look at this are the things this committee would constantly do year in, year out, based on the
Right.
Heritage Tree Ordinance, would be reviewing applications for nominations. And so you look at the things that we do consistently year in,
Yep.
year out, then try to identify what are the things in addition to what we're required to do that we want to take on and have the capacity to do, over and above what we're required to do.
And I know Shaw is not here, but she's expressed several times that she wants to be involved in
Yep.
the review of natural resource-related codes and policies, and through staff explaining how those policies work day to day, decide whether they need revisions and what those revisions are.
So getting through the first three, are you okay? A thumbs up, a thumbs I don't know, not sure, need more information, or a thumbs down, that Shaw can come up with putting these together and coming up with a statement?
Yes.
Is that, I need from everybody though.
Yes.
A thumbs up, a thumbs, I'm not sure.
I'm okay as long as you're recognizing
Okay.
that it's very, very general. You got to
Right.
Yeah,
the
well, that's-
specifics.
And it's
has to
very
follow
draft,
it.
very draft. It's just a starting off point.
Yeah.
But I would like a physical sign so that I can know if there's someone I'm not, if we're not. Mr. Roth, do you have a question or?
Yeah, with thumb up or no? That's she's out.
I would only go like
She's
that.
yeah, I think he's.
I guess what I'm looking at, I'm trying to think of somebody who's written a couple of mission statements, is you can look at the 1 through 3, and it's almost like if you look at the intent or purpose of why you're doing that, come with a mission statement, but not get hung up on exactly how many groups we're going to
Right.
network
Absolutely
with.
not.
Exactly. That was my concern is you could break your head trying to somehow reconcile the content of 1 through 3 and all that when we really need her to look at kind of broader,
A broad,
the broad purpose or intent
Broad
of what's
purpose,
going on,
right.
as opposed
not
to
specific.
If you
Yeah.
look at the language in 1 through 3, they keep repeating,
Similar themes, yes.
protect, restore, enhance, encourage conservation, preservation, enhancement.
Correct. But there's active words in there: assist, develop, implement,
Right.
and
No,
so.
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
but the
Restore.
subject matter is
Right.
to restore, protect, and enhance, things like that.
that's where I'm coming from.
Right, and
Yeah.
so we need to
think
squeeze that
you're
all into something where that is said once and said very well.
Right.
Right. But the active language, how you might do that, assist, develop, implement, or is in there too. That's my
Right.
point. That's my point. And that's good.
And that can be pulled out, and you could really make this into a two-sentence thing,
And
possibly.
allowing her to go and play with it, and then coming back
Right.
to you,
Right. There
and
you
then
go.
you can then take it to that next level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Is that a
Yeah,
thumbs
Yeah,
up?
I can live with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
One comment, though, the more the rest of you talk, the more it makes me think about this stuff. So, looking at it, I do notice one thing that isn't here. I mean, you look through
Okay.
the various action verbs there. I don't see the words assist or advise anyplace.
Oh, well,
And that's
Assi-
exactly what
Item
we're
2,
supposed to do.
assist.
Assist the city.
Oh, here's assist. Yes,
Yes.
there's assist once.
Yeah, in developing and implementing policies. Okay, so implementing is where our 2 cents worth needs to be asked for in
Yes,
some development plans where they strongly affect natural resources.
I just think it should be clear in
Yeah.
whatever comes out
yeah.
of this
Well,
that,
that's-
that our role is an advisory one.
Well, and look
Well, sure.
at the next
I mean, it's
statement
a
that's not,
support role.
look at the other statement that's not numbered right after 1, 2, 3. To carry out
Yes.
these duties,
May
these things
recommend.
shall
Yeah.
occur.
So that-
That's what needs
So
to be.
really, that
focused
should be almost number 4.
too. Yeah.
Yeah,
We're looking
I
at.
thought that when I first looked at
Yeah.
this.
So, okay, we will have Ms. Spady then take the 1 through 4, adding that, and
Sure.
coming up with a broad statement that
Yeah.
could go as a preamble or a mission statement, and that is just a draft. So make sure we're all clear, that's just a draft.
Right.
And then we'll come back, and the whole committee, when we get the new members, then the whole committee would go to that next step.
Yeah.
Okay? Then if we can move on, looking at number 1, and take just a few minutes. Have you had time to read these before? Is this a new to you, or is this a document that you're very familiar with and you know?
We've all seen it
Okay,
before.
so then we don't need to take time. But for you to say, if you were to pick 3 of these 14, what would be your 3? Now, what could you totally cross off? What could you maybe put some together? What would you like to be known for? What would you really like to put your energies in? You only have so much time a month, and you want the city and the other committees, when they think of the National Resource Committee, this is what they do. This is what their role is. And maybe it's not even on here that you're thinking.
There's definitely some of these that can be dropped, like reviewing Oregon City wetland standards. That's been done by the city pretty much. And
Does everybody agree with that one? That's number 5, right?
That's 8.
8, I'm sorry, 8, okay. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Because
Thumbs up?
the city is
Okay.
required by law to do that.
Okay, so
we
can you
don't have to
cross
do it.
8 off?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Mr. DeHart, are you okay? Are you okay with that? Okay. And Mr. Herman?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, down to 13, guys. Good job.
How about preparing inventories of open space, wetland habitat areas, and significant natural
Yeah,
resources?
I think that's pretty
that's
much the
beyond
same
us.
vote.
Same
Okay.
thing, beyond us. Yeah.
Does everybody thumbs up, thumbs down? Give me some kind of Mr. DeHart.
Number 2, we just talked about, I believe, also getting rid of it.
Are we on? Okay, wait, look, I'm going back to
Okay.
7. I think that's what we're.
So you're at 7 now?
Is that the preparing
That's the one that
open
we
space
wrote.
wetlands?
Yeah.
Is that the one?
That's the
Okay.
one.
Does everybody agree with that?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
so, Mr. Roth, do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I don't have
Okay.
a problem. Is there a chance maybe to start with 1 and just go with 1?
Well, we're
Let's do that.
I think that's a good idea.
getting rid of the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, okay.
Let's
Yeah.
go to number 1.
Okay.
Okay.
Promoting community involvement.
All right, I want to talk about that for a second
Okay.
because we did a tour 2 months ago, October 5th, that we had more than half the bus full. We could have easily had it full with a little additional help, not by city, just by the people that said they're going to promote it did not. And I think this group, at a minimum, should once a year attempt to do something that involves the community. And I would suggest that that's one thing that worked and would work very well next year. So we were discussing this. We said, no, that's too much work. My attitude is, if we can't reach out to the public once a year, rather than have them just come here and listen to us,
So,
we should keep the one there in some form. I'd like to see it.
so what you're saying is
One.
do a specific project for
Yeah,
outreach
exactly.
purposes.
Yeah.
And again, as we narrow it down, some will just take off. Some, if it's important to you, let's circle it, but it might look differently in the end.
Sure.
It might come down under an activity. It might come,
Well, I was going to promote community involvement through
but through everything you do. Yeah. So
through annual activity.
does everybody agree that this is important?
I do, but I think there's a way of looking at it of tying the community involvement strategically to something that's of timeliness, something that is kind of like high visibility priority for the city, so that it's not like I think Earth Day they had maybe how many different projects did they have in the city?
They had 18 or so this year.
Yeah,
But-
and so if we would have sponsored an Earth Day restoration project and been one of 19 in the city, we could have got lost in the
could've-
shuffle.
yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is we're going to do community outreach in one big activity a year, be kind of strategic about it, be kind of timely, and be kind of relevant so that it's distinctive for this group in the city, not just another litter pickup.
And what I'm hearing you say also then, if that's more like a guiding principle or that's more an activity to support one of your goals that you come up with.
Yeah,
That
I
could
think
be.
that's
Yeah,
reasonable.
I think so too.
So star that though, because, well, I think I hear from one, Mr. Roth, do I hear that's important, but not as a main focus?
Well, I guess getting back to the thing of capacity building,
Okay.
there's things that, I mean, we could probably identify 3 things out of the 15 that the city's just expecting us to do, like the heritage tree nominations and other things. and we could get totally booked up just
that.
with the ongoing commitments. So it's almost like I think we have to identify some things that aren't ongoing commitments that we
Right.
want to tackle too, over and above that.
Okay, so are you okay with starring that? Doesn't mean it's going to be a main focus, but starring that? Okay, that's okay?
As long as we don't lose it.
Yeah,
don't
okay.
lose it.
Number 2, coordinating natural resource activities with other jurisdictions and
I
institutions.
think it's so broad that I don't know how it ever happened.
Yeah, I don't think it belongs there personally.
Yeah.
Some people, sometimes people do presentations for us, and that can be nice or helpful.
Yes.
But that could be,
Yeah, but
again,
that's-
an activity, not your main focus.
Yeah. No,
Okay, so are we okay with number 2, crossing off? Okay, everybody?
Yep.
Since the thumb's not going well, at least a nod.
I'm not
Yes,
voting.
we're
You're
I'm
not- I
staying.
know, I'm looking at my team here. Okay, so that's gone. Number 3, drafting recommendations for acquisitions, enhancements, and protection of open space and natural resource areas.
Does that happen?
Yeah, it hasn't yet for us.
Well-
You know, it's certainly a noble undertaking, and of course, that would require the inventory that was referred to earlier,
Which is supposed to exist,
that's supposed to already exist, and
but that's good. As the new areas are annexed.
Some
there'll be
areas
new
may be
opportunities.
new and added,
Yeah.
and for example, in South End, if you've got large tracts of land which are potentially
It goes back to what Doug was saying.
purchasable.
yeah.
Doug was saying earlier in our conversation, we need specific things to give recommendations to, and a process to make that happen.
Yeah.
This fits that really well.
I did look at the South End plan, and there's quite a few open areas they've recommended in that plan, but they didn't ask us first. So it goes back to the whole communication thing.
No, I did try to
Well, yeah,
provide some input
yeah.
that is
Yeah, you
representative.
did go
Bob's
to
been
the
on that
meetings.
committee. Yeah.
I figured since I'm on the furthest portion of the city from that project, I just did not
Yeah.
get involved, but I have been looking at it anyway at this point.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Is this doable?
is this doable by us? Not without a
Well,
lot of input.
Not the way it's stated here, I don't
No,
think.
we
But-
can't
but
just-
I think
it's
that
kinda like
the
number
the
one.
other
I
issue
mean,
with this
there's-
is
there's-
that
there's
you have to
stuff
have
here that's important.
you have to have resources.
To do it.
To
I
do
don't even
it.
think it has to be, say, draft, it can say advance.
Yes, I mean, I think this needs to be rewritten.
The
I mean,
acquisition of
a lot of the issues included here are good ones, but
Right.
it should be rewritten to state what the committee would actually take on, and I don't think we would do something that broad
Yeah,
in general.
Yeah, we're not going to take on
Yeah, I mean,
that
there's,
from beginning to end. We
there's
need-
a
When we look at
situa-
when we look at 3 that we're going to choose, this one looks like there's some pieces in it that what I'm hearing is could be,
yeah.
but
Yes.
as stated here, it's not realistic.
Okay.
Is that true? Or
It's more of a supporting function. We should be encouraging that to happen. We don't have to do all the work. We just can be an encouraging body to say yes.
Support role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ms. Walters, what do you think? As
Well,
from the
yeah,
city?
grant writing takes time and effort and usually requires significant staff commitment to find other monies to leverage city
is
money.
this statement about grant writing?
Well, I'm thinking if you have grant funding from Metro to go out and do acquisition and protection of open space through purchase, donation, conservation, or otherwise, then as part of that grant proposal to Metro, you need support letters from various community groups to show that there's partnership. And I think what Jerry's saying is more accurate in that it's a supportive
So
role.
this would be like a support letter?
That's
that you
one.
write a support
That's one
letter?
idea.
Well,
yeah.
well,
Okay.
An example of this
Yeah.
happening right now is the Greater Oregon City
Watershed
Watershed
Council.
Council
Yeah.
and others are developing grant proposals to Metro to get financing for enhancement of natural areas and parks
Mm-hmm.
scattered throughout Oregon City. And that's taken quite a bit of work for them to do.
Yeah.
And that's
That's
all, it's all being done by volunteers with a lot of assistance from Metro who wants to give the grant, basically.
So
Fortunately.
what I'm hearing 2 different things.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing, the way you're reading this is that if someone were to write a grant and asked for support from the Natural Resource Committee, then that would be one of their, I'm not sure that's a goal. That seems more like an activity, and then you'd write a letter.
Yeah, when it comes up.
Yeah,
Because we're not
if it comes up.
initiating in
Right.
that case.
Right.
We're
Is that-
responding
are we
to a
reading that right?
request.
So, is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so we'd rewrite it as more of a supporting role.
Right.
Rather than,
But is that what you want to be known for? Is that what, I mean, is that what you,
well, that's not.
that where you
wouldn't
wanna
be-
put your
That wouldn't
energies?
be our one
Right.
of our three
right?
chosen
I mean,
ones.
that's,
But that's
what I'm
just,
hearing.
yeah. Well, we're discussing them and trying to winnow
Yeah.
out which ones
Right.
are going to be it,
I think the things we want to be known for are the things in addition to things that we require. I mean, we could be known for processing Heritage Street nominations, but I don't think that's something, that's captured the imagination or mobilize on a broad front.
When they think of this committee, that's not the first thing you want to be known for. That can be an activity. That can be something, but not
That's not
where
the-
you're putting all your energies.
Right.
Okay? Do you all agree then that we can put that, doesn't mean that you won't do it, but that wouldn't be the top three?
Right. It would be something we would work on as time allows,
Right.
rather than a major focus. Something that needs to be worked on and improved.
Okay.
But until it's improved, we're not going to emphasize it.
Okay? All right, so that's, so everyone's good with that?
All right.
Good.
Mr. DeHart, what are you thinking? You okay with
No,
that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I mean, I think the kernel of the idea is here. It just needs to be developed. I mean, I'd like to be known for enhancing and protecting open space and natural resource areas in Oregon City myself. I mean,
Yes, amen.
Yeah.
lofty objective.
Yes, it is. Yep.
I think it's making it practical.
Okay, then.
Okay, number 4, reviewing updates to the comprehensive plan.
I think that's a function.
That's definitely a function. We have to wait until the comprehensive plan are being updated, however, which means it
yeah.
doesn't necessarily.
Well, and it doesn't have to be limited to the comp plan. It could be review and
Right.
initiate codes, comp
When you
plan.
adopt when you amend the comp plan, you're updating it as well. So when we
Right.
adopt the concept plan for South End, that's an amendment to the comp plan, and so you're reviewing that for compliance with these statewide planning goals as well. Yeah.
Is that what code and policy would fall under then? Under
Yeah.
number 4?
Well,
That's definitely.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely, because it's a long-range planning document for the city.
When's the next time, looking at this, that we have input, just in a scheduled sense?
There's several things coming up this year, including South End. We're in public
Sure.
hearings for South End right now, but we also have, which I was going to go talk about a little bit later, some code updates that we've been accruing over the years that are maintenance and cleanup type code, some of which are natural resources related, but some which aren't. So
this is like currently timely and relevant.
yeah, I've got a draft timeline for those, which I was going to talk about later. But so yeah, it's something that's coming up with a view towards March Planning Commission initial work sessions, and it probably wouldn't be adopted till the end of 2014. So 2014. Yeah.
So is this one you want to keep in?
I don't think we have a choice.
Okay.
I think that's
So number 4 is in? Thumbs
Yeah,
up?
until we get down and have 5 at the end.
Okay.
well, we might be able to combine something with it too here
Yes,
later. So,
yeah.
You're okay?
But it
Yep.
belongs here, yeah.
Okay. So far we have 1 out of 4. Good job, guys. Number 5, reviewing and commenting.
I think that should be cut. I think it should be cut.
Okay.
Too
reviewing and
specific?
Commenting on metro programs. Is that cut?
I think that if there's an appropriate opportunity, they can come and speak to us all they want. But I
Well,
don't
we
think
can
we
also,
have to.
we can invite them too to find out
Yes,
what
we
they're
can
doing.
invite them, because
Like we have
they've
been.
got some major programs within the city.
Right.
The
Yes, they do.
Kenema Bluffs, for instance, and there are other activities of the grant activities, which are
Yeah,
there's a
and
good
then
chance that Oregon City will be getting a grant.
Their regional planning requirements, which we enact at the local level, such as Title III and 13. So, yeah.
I agree that we might well interact with them, might ask us to brief them to brief us on something. I guess my understanding, though, is not that our job is to review and comment on Metro programs.
Right.
I mean, to the degree the city's involved in planning Goal 5 issues, that's covered under 4, not here.
Yeah, and you know, by the time Metro gets a program to the point of presenting it to us, it's going to be pretty impressive already, and probably pretty well thought through. It would be my impression, having dealt with them quite a bit.
I don't think 5 belongs here.
Okay, so do
Yeah.
we agree? Does everybody agree to eliminate 5?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, just recognizing there could be components of 5 that are already kind of reflected in 4.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and you know, and Metro is a good source of speakers and so on for our entertainment and so on. You know.
Education, right?
And education, yes.
Okay, so moving on to 6. Recommending standards for surface water management, eco-friendly development, wildlife habitat, tree groves, and ecologically distinctive natural areas.
Yeah, well, that word groves is in there again, and it must have been popular, you know, 15 years ago.
I mean, that has to do with codes and,
I think it should be in with the other code-related subjects.
So added to 4.
Yeah.
exactly.
Does everybody agree with that?
Well, we've got to kind of change. I think code, let's see, goal 5. We're combining goals, the land use planning, and the code changes all together.
Those are all the same thing, pretty much.
Well,
I think.
Walters, if there's something that we're saying that isn't feasible, you'll let us know, right?
Sure. Yep. And standards is a very broad term here. It could mean codes or policies and surface
Yeah.
water.
You know,
Yeah. So
I could see that if we did enough study and reviewed current city policy, that we could recommend changes to the standards. Sure. But that's,
Yeah.
you know, that's a big project again.
we touched on this a little bit, didn't we, with the pesticide application a while back?
right, and then you have upcoming. You have a stormwater design manual update that Public Works is doing. So there's that deals with surface water management in the next few months that they're doing that. So I think you'll want to be involved in that.
Is that codes and policies again, though?
That's
or-
codes and policies.
So that could go under
4.
4.
Correct.
4 and 6 could be part of whatever gets rewritten.
Right, right.
Be more comprehensive.
So
Yeah.
in number 4, if you're reviewing updates to the comprehensive plan and adding in their codes and policies, incorporating that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
usually when
because-
you update a comp plan and you have the comp plan amendment, which is this legislative action, and then you have an implementing ordinance, and then all sorts of other stuff that implements it
Yeah.
as part and parcel of that update. So, yeah.
Yeah, and if we're going to recommend standards, that's going to be an update to the plan.
I just feel like 6, 7, and 8, just to save us time, all relate to 4 a lot,
Yeah, and
without being so wordy.
yeah, and 7 has mostly been done by the
Right.
city already.
Yeah.
And it's beyond us to do. We'd have to be running
Let me
around
go
town
back-
looking for natural
Let
areas.
me go back because I want to make sure we have everybody's voice again.
Okay.
Okay.
So number 6, do we all agree that that components of number 4?
Yes.
Okay. And then number 7, preparing inventories of open spaces, wetlands. What do you,
Well, I think as Brian said, it's been done. Hopefully, the city continues to do this kind of stuff.
so we
I don't-
can
That's
eliminate.
beyond our pay grade.
Yeah, goal, what they call a Goal 5 inventory
Yeah,
is a requirement whenever you do a comp plan update
Yeah,
or
and that
expand your urban growth boundary.
and that would include inventorying all these areas, the different types and so on.
Right.
So 7 really doesn't.
What is something the committee would do? We might be asked to review or provide input into
Yeah.
an inventory or something.
Yeah.
But that's not something you would
But
initiate.
we wouldn't do the inventory.
So does everybody agree that we can eliminate that one?
Yeah.
Okay?
Wholehearted.
Thumbs up, everybody? Yep, okay. Then going on to 8, reviewing Oregon City wetland standards. It's kind of the same thing in conjunction with.
That's something the city is required by law to do.
So that really
it's-
isn't a part of this committee. So we all agree that that can be removed.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, moving along.
Okay.
Number 9 on the back,
This is one that's very important. It's one of the big three, I think.
Okay, commenting on land use applications that have the potential to significantly impact natural resources. And I'm only reading the bold.
Yeah. And I changed it to review and recommend, but that's okay.
But this
Instead of
is
comment.
one of those ongoing things. I think it's
Right.
kind of a primary expectation of this group.
Well, I don't know that that's true.
You know, we basically, I
We
think
hope
we're,
so.
No, but I mean,
This is
in a
an
perfect
interesting
world.
one, yeah, because it,
I think that we're trying to implement a policy where the city knows when to refer things like this to us, and that's a city decision they're going to have to make. And if we start hearing about they're not
Right.
doing their job, you know, then we can.
But what if
This,
this is
yeah,
one
comes
that you
down to-
take on? If
Right.
this is one that defines you, then that's where we're going to need to work with the city to educate what that looks like.
Yeah.
So both parties know.
Yeah, this one is very important.
Yeah,
And
we
then-
definitely need to do this.
And then I think part of that miscommunication is going to be taken care of because you're both going to understand what that looks like.
yeah, and I know the mechanism for how we would do it. So the question then is, what threshold
When?
and when? And-
But after,
yeah.
if this is one that you view is important, then when we go to the city council and when work with the city, then everybody's going to understand what that is, and you will then develop how that works and when it implies.
Pete's used the word threshold several times, and I like the term. I mean,
I keep using it
we're
to
clearly
say-
not going to deal with everything the city does or thinks about, so
Right.
But knowing how a particular code works in a specific situation will give you some level of comfort or discomfort in that regard, because if the city says, well, we always review tree removals a certain way, and you're feeling that that code is not adequate enough and doesn't provide adequate protection, then it's the policy and the code that needs to be changed, rather than the notification type thing. So
That's what they would
yeah.
have, if they
Yeah.
took on number 4, that's what they would have the power to investigate.
Right, yeah. And so it really comes down to notice as well, because we always provide notice of any land use application to any neighborhood association and to Parks and Rec Advisory Committee if it's next to a park, and it may or may not affect the Natural Resources Committee, but do they want to receive every land use application or not? And I think
And that would be something
these are things
we
that
would
can be
ask
spelled
them.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Roth, you had a question?
What was it? Not really. I'm
Okay.
okay.
So what I'm hearing loud and clear, that you believe that 9 should be in there. Agree?
It's kind of a core function.
And that might, again, be combined in a rewrite with number 4.
Okay. Okay. Number 10, recommending state-of-art technologies and management practices to protect natural features.
I think that's so broad, it's lost. That's my opinion.
yes, I mean, to the degree the committee does it, and we might well, it
Yep.
would actually be part of those other functions.
Right.
Yeah, that would, because say if there's some new technology to protecting streams from erosion, then you're looking at codes right away, and so on and so forth. And
Or helping.
but I do see it as something we should be doing. But whether or not it's something we want to single out for this year specifically, I don't know.
Well, recommending state-of-art technology, to me, that sounds like dollar signs.
Yeah, well, sometimes new technology.
And do you have that free, I'm asking, I don't know. Do you have that within this committee?
I think the state of
That's
the
an
airport
important
is.
question. Yeah, I mean, in terms of fiscal responsibility, this committee doesn't have a budget to work with. They have their own operating budget for sundry type things, but in terms of a year-to-year budget for enhancement of natural resources, no, I'm not aware of it. So not from this general fund. Yeah.
So, but what I heard you say is that is important that they have state-of-the-art technology. So that could be something, again, though, that is more written in your guiding principles that are beliefs that
Well,
you,
and this does say recommend. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Right,
think
it is.
one
Right,
of the
that's
things
true.
the committee does is
Yeah.
to recommend the
Right.
use
Like the,
of management practices that are you know.
Like the integrated pest management plan.
I don't know that we'll ever get to it tonight, but there's all this stuff circulating around about beavers cutting down trees in Clackamas Cove. And
Yeah,
one of the things we have to do is understand the beavers need access to food. So we got to give them some. And that's the best available practice right now, is to give them a tree or two rather than remove the trees from the site. Give them a tree or two in the water for them to work on. I mean, that's an example of something we could recommend. That's something I wanted to recommend tonight.
Well, I think though you're trying to, maybe the best management practice though is trying to reconcile the need and benefits of having shade for waterways to keep temperatures down, and also
Sure.
provide habitat for beavers to survive. So I mean, maybe some of the recommendations we'd make is trying to help
I think that should be
reconcile
kept in there. I really, now I think about it more, I think it's good to keep that in there.
So number 10, you're wanting that
So-
kept in, or you wanting that to put with another? So far you have 2 that are pretty strong.
All right.
This can be an activity, but maybe it's not. It's not the driving thing.
Yeah, it
for
isn't
us.
really a standalone goal, I don't think. But this business of recommending best management practices, I mean, it fits with the others.
Yeah.
So
Right.
add this, add
Right.
to,
It doesn't need to be standalone.
okay, so add to another one, or add
Yeah.
to, more of a guiding principle. This is what we base our practice on.
Well, yeah, and this could, this is one of those, the idea of recommending best management practices to protect natural features, habitat, blah, blah, blah. That's even one that could go into the more specific stuff, clear up there with the duties of the committee.
The mission statement.
Right after the preamble.
Yeah.
Good.
Good. Or guiding principles often is, this is what guides our decisions. This is what guides, to meet our goals. And that would be to recommend the best practices.
Well, do you see these top 3 as being our top 3 goals? Are you talking about now? Or
No,
what
no,
do
no,
you-
no, no, no. That's your preamble or your
Okay.
mission statement.
Well, no, I'm talking
Yeah.
about what we're working on now to consolidate.
Oh, these
now.
are your goals that
Okay,
you're
thank
working
you.
on
All right.
now. Mm-hmm.
You're getting me lost there for a second. Okay.
And you've got 2 that I'm hearing pretty loud and clear that are
Right.
important. That's number 4 of the comprehensive plan, codes and policies, and then number 9, commenting on and review and recommend on land use applications. So, okay,
Well,
so
the more I think about 10, Doug has convinced me and others here, I really feel that that's a very important area that we can give information and recommendation in this field of what is best, what do we know is out there, because there are people on this committee who see things that the staff maybe never see, all right, as an example. And I think that's an important role for us to advance some other approaches to solving some challenges. I don't know what to do with it, though.
well, let's
You
put
know-
some questions by it.
The thing is, it can't be something that a service we can provide, but it doesn't have to be a driving primary priority. Because it's kind of reactive in a sense.
It seems like this is a maybe right now.
Yeah.
Go through the rest of the list
right,
and
all right.
Then see,
All right.
yeah.
Okay.
It definitely has some merit because it has some strength.
Yeah.
Okay, number 11, recommending methods. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Recommending methods to protect the night sky.
I believe that, and that should go back up and to be a part of 10. I really think it's a specific suggestion area that I know Shaw thinks is very important, and I agree with her, but it's one of those recommendations of best available practices or
That's
state-of-the-art.
Yeah, I'd agree
Direction.
with that.
Okay.
But at the same time, we have made a beginning on it and should continue with it. But it could easily be subsumed under one of the other categories.
Okay,
specific.
so right now I have 10 and 11 are kind of, they're together and they're somewhere, but we don't know where.
Yeah.
They're very different, though. I mean, the business of best management practices is kind of a fundamental thing where
Yeah.
the light pollution is a specific task.
Well, right, but it is a state-of-the-art technology that we want to see implemented.
Yes, that part's true.
Yeah, and management of light is something that needs to be done.
Right.
And
You know, it's how you write it
yeah,
is
yeah.
what'll
So
have a
it could
true
be
meaning.
an outgrowth of 10. It should be an outgrowth of 10. I
Yeah,
think.
it'd be one of the specific things that
Right,
you might well
right,
do.
because we
or
want
work on.
these to lead specific tasks that we do, and that would be an already present specific task.
I think if you look at kind of like a clear night sky as a desirable outcome.
Mm-hmm.
It fits in right with like wildlife habitats or riparian corridor. No, it's a simple natural condition that we're trying to promote or protect.
You can see it that way.
Yeah.
Well, it fits both, so.
And again, after Ms. Beatty brings this back, you're going to have voices if you feel it was represented or not. You'll have that voice. Okay, number 12, coordinating with Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, PRAC.
And this is an activity that should be carried out.
Yes.
I don't know if you've ever had a joint meeting of the two bodies, but
We-
I have attended their meetings.
Yeah, we did have a joint meeting
We did? Okay,
with Betsy
I forget so
Terrell.
easy.
That was before your time,
Oh, okay, that's why I didn't
when the
remember.
committee was still first iteration. But
Yeah.
I just feel like this is something we have to put in, period. We're supposed to coordinate with Parks and Rec and the City Commission, really.
Yes.
And if we're not doing that on an annual basis, then we're not
We-
fulfilling our,
Well, I might point out that we should be coordinating with Public Works, City Parks as
yeah,
well.
that's true too.
Sure.
And
I
probably
agree.
some other agencies.
You're right.
They should all be done.
Could I do a reality check maybe?
Sure.
It's been so hard to try to kind of arrange these meetings. I understand kind of the intent behind this, but I'm wondering if it was really, if both sides felt it was really urgent or it would be really productive, it wouldn't be so hard to set up. I'm almost
Well-
questioning the assumption
Well,
under this.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the reason for the meeting in the first
Well,
place?
That's good. That's
because
good.
our bailiwicks, shall we say,
Yeah, I-
overlap a great deal.
There's
They
a lot of
have-
overlap in natural
Yeah,
resources.
Right, because they're dealing with natural resources, because they're dealing with parks, and they have agreed that we should be doing it. You know, when I talk with their president and their membership, but we have it written into our bylaws that we're supposed to do this. They do not. And
Well,
And-
Public Works does not have an advisory committee.
yeah, Public Works doesn't have an advisory
So
committee.
this is
We-
another allied group.
Yeah,
like
well,
us.
Public Works would be John Lewis, basically.
Yeah, they have the Transportation Advisory Committee, and then they have, so that's kind of one of their main
Right, that's their
advisory
main group,
committees.
that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, but, and they are concerned with roads.
I don't know, if it needs to be a goal, fine, but it seems to me to be an obligation
more like
that
an
we do this.
It's
And
an
I don't know where you put
activity.
No.
obligations.
So you'll have your goals, and then you're going to have some activities, and this seems like an activity.
Yeah, I think this will be a set amount of doing, and it's not really something we want to emphasize in the same way we'd want to emphasize
Yeah.
working with the rules and
Right.
so on.
Okay, do we agree with that? That it's important, but it might not be one of the 3 goals? It'll activity or written into a
I think
goal.
you said it right. It's an activity. It's not one of the fundamental goals of the committee.
Okay, and we all agree with that. Okay, and number 13, carrying out the Heritage Tree Program.
At this point, we've already rewritten the code, and at this point, it'd be just a matter of things like we did today of approving trees as they come in. And that's entirely dependent on somebody nominating a heritage tree.
Again, that's a task or an activity.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
does everybody agree with that? And number 14, assessing and commenting on other natural resources related topics as appropriate.
Other duties as assigned.
Other duty, yes. Every job description has
You know,
that.
this is just a catch-all, just in case something comes up that we haven't thought about yet, or are defined. That's all it's for. And so it's not really, unless something comes up, there's nothing
Yeah.
to do. So
So do you want that as one of your goals, or do you want that as a?
not one of the
a-
emphasized goals for this year. No, not one of the 3.
Right,
But
okay, so that's just kind of a given?
it's more
So
of a given.
what can happen then in the meeting, someone can bring that up, have it in your committee meetings, and then you all agree with that, but it doesn't have to be a driving force.
If someone comes up with an issue that isn't covered anywhere else that looks like it needs to be dealt with, then yes, this would apply.
Depending on where we're going with this idea of writing up of, what is this committee, what are its duties and responsibilities, that one fits in there, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's,
someone-
it's,
Yeah.
it's the kind
Yeah.
of end, oh, by the way one, but it still fits in
Right.
there.
Yeah, it does. I agree.
So from this little exercise that we just did, there were a few that really stood out.
Could there be an opportunity maybe to add some additional ones that aren't here?
Sure.
Pete, if the city was trying to seek citizen or committee input on stuff like related to climate change, who would they go to?
I think they'd look to this body, because and perhaps Public Works as well. I don't believe the Transportation Advisory Committee is really involved in climate change at this point, because it's a broad topic for them. You know, they're really concerned with road safety and that sort of thing. However, potentially, the scope is there.
I'm looking at the 300-plus projects that they manage and maintain that include plants and so on.
Right.
As a potential point of interest that we could trade some information on, I'm sure.
Right. And then you've got efforts and initiatives through Metro, which are going to be required at the local level to address climate change, at least in terms of fleet management for the city's trucks and cars. And then you really get into management of freight and those sorts of things, which has to do with agencies other than the city, like ODOT and that sort of thing. So, yeah, there's a role for the NRC in this.
That would be one thing to include in the list of things that should be forwarded to us.
Right.
And I guess I'm thinking of just kind of the impact with this this cold wave that's hit most of the country right now. The long-term impacts of not specifying a responsibility or kind of addressing this. It affects water supplies, forest health, agricultural productivity. It's such a range of things. I'm not saying that we're responsible for all that, but it seems like we need to acknowledge the potential impacts of not being on top of it.
Would that be, or could that be under under codes and policies?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at long-term impacts based on, increasing population of the city itself and within our urban growth boundary.
Yeah,
that's a good one, long-term impact to add.
I do really feel that we shouldn't be out here saying, you shouldn't have cut that tree down. We should be helping set policies that encourage the preservation of trees.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're gonna have more strength by doing that.
Yeah, because especially since the tree's already been cut down.
Yeah, spending your energies on
We're in a very weak position at that
Now
point.
that you mention it, yes.
Put that tree back.
Put that tree back.
So, are there any others that we'd like to address? Any other topics?
Just thinking out loud, you suggested that maybe we take what we did here and then go the next step to a working draft from that. I think it'd be easier for me than to have that working draft and try to suggest changes, additions to it. Maybe that's a next step.
Okay. And then what? And as I said, Miss Miss Spady said that she would create that for us once we got everybody's opinion. My only concern is we have a member here that's not here tonight.
Yeah.
That we didn't get his opinion.
And a new one coming on.
And a new one coming on.
Yeah.
So, taking this, having her put this together, and then we definitely would need to come back. The next step would be when everybody's here.
Sure.
Are everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
So then I don't want to take up any more time then if you're
Thanks.
okay with that. And
I really appreciate you helping us.
Yes, very much.
Thank you so much. And
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Carol.
so the
Excellent.
next step will be our next meeting when the new members come and this.
Yeah, we
we'll
need
put
to
together.
do all we can to make sure everybody.
Right. And just
Richard, you can't go to Oklahoma next month.
and for Carol's
Come home
purposes,
pretty soon.
for planning, are we talking about February is the meeting where we're going to interview candidates or be
Yeah,
interviewed?
we will
So
have
do
some
So
we
it's
want
actually
Carol
2
here
months
then?
out.
Yeah,
So do we want Carol here then, or do we want to have something fleshed out tentatively by Shaw for us to look at?
So
if we have 3 candidates it's going to take 20 minutes per candidate, so
Okay.
it's a big meeting.
So we should put
yeah.
off this for
Yeah.
a couple
we
months.
should probably go to March.
And
Makes sense.
when is the city council does the final selection, or the mayor? How does that work?
The mayor makes the final selection following the interviews.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we have to forward a report after the meeting, and then,
Right.
Okay.
And it's all, the idea is that everybody's in the meeting during the interview, and then there's a discussion and then a decision.
yeah, so again, it would be important to get everybody here.
Yeah.
Are these interviews going to be televised?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I don't
Yeah.
think we were.
Yeah,
at least
it hasn't been done this way before. It's a new procedure for all the different boards and committees. And I sent an email, which I got from the city recorder, about these new organizational procedures for new membership. So, and I've got a paper copy of it, which I can talk about tonight.
You're going to talk about like how we develop the interview questions, or
Can. Sure. Yeah.
So my understanding then, March 2nd, the second Wednesday in March,
Second Wednesday in March. I
would be
think.
the time when we would come together, have our full committee.
Yeah.
And then we'd have the draft from Ms. Beatty at that time.
Correct.
And we'd send it out to everybody in advance, so it's not a surprise.
Right.
And then we would come in and have another discussion. Is that a good?
Sounds good. I'm just looking at calendar here. Oop.
And if there's any comments that you feel that we might not have heard, you can email those to the whole committee, and then Ms. Beatty will get those.
Okay.
So when she does the right.
So it'll be March 12th. Yeah. Wednesday, March 12th.
Well, thank you for allowing me
Well,
to be a
thank you
part
for
of it.
helping us. Thank you for being willing to do this.
So I'll get a hold of Shaw and let her know.
Okay.
And
you're-
I've got a set of notes, you've got a set of notes. If you want to send yours, fine. That would be good.
Yeah, why don't you make the first contact, and then I
Okay.
can talk. And then again, knowing that everybody on the committee can give her that information too.
Okay.
This is
Good.
definitely a committee driven
Right.
statement.
It has to be all of us, so.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you,
All
Carol.
right. Have a great evening.
Okay.
Do we have any member reports?
Let's see. We did hand this out on the illumination on the
Okay.
22nd, which everybody should
Bye,
go
Carol.
to. Good night.
You should come to this. Take this. Since you love Oregon
Oh, I've
City.
already signed up.
You know about this?
Oh, yeah.
For the elevator?
Elevator thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
great.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, and everybody should attend it. I'll be there.
Okay.
I imagine Pete will be there.
I have something, Mr. Chairman. if,
Yes.
Okay. There's a number of documents going around about trees being damaged by beavers at Clackamas Cove. And I'd like to see this body make a recommendation. I called up Denise Kies and left her a message. I didn't get a call back. But there's a fundamental issue here. The trees on the east side of the cove, we can't afford to lose them if that's the way they're going to go. And the beavers are busy taking them. Or, in the process, she's looking for what do I do to reduce the public risk of trees potentially falling on the trail. I understand that. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to fall on the trail, but if they're weakened under the right conditions, they could fall on the trail, they could fall on the cove.
Yeah.
So I want to suggest something here that we would send off as a recommendation from this body, because I think it's our duty to suggest something here. And I'm just going to give you a concept here. This is regarding tree issues at Clackamas Cove. As the city seeks to interact with wildlife activities in Clackamas Cove, we recommend that tree management methods recognize and provide for beaver feeding behaviors. All right? Let's see here. Recognizing that Clackamas Cove is typical of other waterways in this area and the Clackamas River, that protection of trees, the public welfare, which is her concern too, and provision for food and wildlife cover be considered when making these decisions. And the reason I'm saying this is that all my life, 36 years, I've dealt with beavers, and I'm pretty good at dealing with them. I also know they're smarter than I am. a lot. And they'll do what I want, or don't want, at their decision. I feel that some of those trees that they feel are weakened should be fell in the cove, because the east side of the cove lacks a lot of cover, and it would benefit from cover, rather than removing them but with a contractor. I don't know what the intention is, but if they're to be removed because they might fall on the trail, then why can't they be felled in the cove and let the habitat value of the beavers work? They know what they're doing. Removing limbs, feeding on the cambium, building dens, they're really good at this. Overall, my area, there's 160 cottonwood trees, not counting small ones. And we give a tree or two from the site where I have, under my control, Gladstone, to the beavers. We give them a tree or two every year, so that they won't come after nursery stock and other things. I just like to see this group, take some action here, because I feel like the city doesn't know what to do. The animals know exactly what they're going to do, and we work with their behavior and give them at least some of what they need. And I think the damage to other remaining stands might be lessened. That's, I really feel, is an issue. Now, I also called Randy Tyler from the Cove Development Company to tell him the same thing. I haven't heard back from him, but I feel like he's going to face this same thing. Those developers, when they get in there planting woody shrubs, even evergreens, they're going to go after certain things, not just deciduous trees, because they want either the salt or other aspects of what's in the bark of evergreens. It's going to be an ongoing issue. And then Brian's told me about a lot of things happening at John Storm Park, which I'm aware there's a lot of interaction.
It's the same issues,
Right.
pretty much.
But I think if a tree or two is fell on the edge of John Storm Park and the river, it doesn't hurt the river at all. Doesn't restrict boating access. We're not talking about 100-foot tall trees. We're talking about whatever. It gives the animals something to work on. I don't know, Doug, what your experience has been, or anybody else on this committee, but that's my experience.
I'd like to expand on that a little bit. Beavers want them to fall in the water, because that's where they live and that's where they feel safe. And they're all cut so that they will fall towards the water. They're not cut to fall on the path, even though some of them are within reach of the path. But we do have...
Where the beavers have been chewing them?
Chewing on them, yeah. They
right.
want to follow them in the water, because that's where it's easiest for them to work on and feel safe at the same time. They come out of the water an astounding distance. They're mowing down trees out on that North Spit as well. And so I don't think there's a huge danger from them, but I would like to see trees that are planned to be preserved, which I think are already marked, be wrapped in chicken wire loosely, which I've already suggested to Pete, and he's passed that on, so that we don't lose the ones that are going to be preserved and a part of the landscape in the future. And the rest of them, let the beavers have them, and they are going to try to drop them down towards the river. Some of those are eventually going to be bulldozed out, to make cuts in the bank and all that, like has been planned previously. But by properly protecting the ones we need to save, it's much better than losing all those trees, because we worked hard to get some preservation done as opposed to not.
And I did get a response back from Denise on that, and she said that's great, but they don't have the money to do it, so they were asking for
Don't have the money to do
volunteers.
To buy a roll of chicken wire or
Well,
two,
do the labor and...
and the labor, and
Yeah.
But they would have the money for a contractor to remove the trees?
I'm just saying what I
I-
heard. I'll send you the response.
okay,
Okay.
thank
Did you hear anything about my comment to her, or?
I didn't hear that
Okay.
yet, no.
Well, I'd be glad to put this idea into a typed version and pass it on to you, Pete. And I think Brian's point is very good here, too. But this is where we need some
getting back
input.
to your recommendation here, is this something that you
Yeah.
all want to make a
Yeah.
formal recommendation?
Well,
Yeah, this
I've got
is
some-
recommending more advanced practices.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
Well, I
But
think
do you want to make it more structured, like we were talking about earlier, and actually sign the form and,
Uh,
or
Well-
do you want to just pass this along?
okay.
Yeah, I just want to provide, I guess, some input. I think one of the things we have to do, and think about best management practices or whatever, is kind of look at who's benefiting from trees standing versus who's benefiting from trees going down. And to best of my knowledge, the beavers aren't listed, on the Endangered Species Act as threatened or endangered.
And they are.
And they're not. And I think what we're trying to do is you think of all the resources are going towards protecting and restoring riparian areas. And it seems a little bit, understanding beavers need to eat, but I think what we're trying to do is figure out, is above a certain population of beavers, is it more important to try to keep the Clackamas River and tributaries cool through healthy riparian corridors, or to feed growing, expanded, it's not just beaver, because nutria will go ahead and burrow into the bank and cause collapses and loss of riparian areas too. So I think maybe what this committee would want to do is, and think what Brian's talking about, is maybe like advanced best management practice. It is kind of crazy to have money to cut down damaged trees, but not have money to pay people to put the chicken wire out. It's, but because if you're going to replace a tree later on, it's going to take resources to do that. Then you have all the downtime before the tree grows up to provide enough shade to be of any use.
Yeah, this would be a good volunteer project.
It would.
Actually.
But there are 120 trees left on the east side. I know this because I did an inventory some time ago.
Before Beaver?
No,
BC?
well, before Beaver.
BB?
Yes, sir, BB. I'm just suggesting that we send something post haste to the Parks and Rec Division saying, we would suggest, I believe you need to give them something because they're going to want to take. It's better to give than to take. That's one issue, and that's better to protect, like you're saying. But to shoot, are you saying shoot?
I'd never said shoot. Trap is preferred.
We're going to send them all to Bob's yard. You can put them all in the yard.
But to say that you'd manage the beaver population, ODFW is not going to let you do that.
No.
Not without a big cause.
But Pete, I think this is kind of an example, though, of a bigger issue, and think about like future restoration projects, or is just figuring out how do you manage different goals of providing terrestrial wildlife food supplies versus trying to make sure you get enough survival and achieve the goals you're trying to with the original restoration project. Because I haven't heard a restoration project yet that's designed just to feed beavers.
Right. Yeah.
But beavers will feed, and that's inherent in their behavior. And so,
So-
if Randy and company aren't thinking about that, they need to, and that's why I talked to him. I know he would be thinking about it because they've had other projects where they've had problems. But we have an immediate need here. They're going to spend money on contractors to remove these trees that may fall on the trail, but may not. My attitude would be, I think, Brian, you agree, would be to push them over or follow them into the river.
If the beaver will do it, just let them finish the job, because they probably will.
Okay.
Though they don't always, I have to admit that. And
Right.
if it stays there for a few months and they don't, then hire your contractor.
Excuse me. And then I must tell you that when I have a written report that I did 7 years ago, when I saw the whole entire east side of the cove being everything removed from the top of the bank down to the bottom except the trees. That's why the habitat is so degraded. It's not dense in there like it used to be. Now, on the other parts of the cove, where not just where I am, but other people are not touching it, the beaver activity is very active, but ineffective in terms of the volume of material that's there. I guess my issue is that the volume is down. What's left to be retained is important. It'd be better to give them a tree or two right now.
Well, like I was suggesting, though, is protect the ones that are
Okay.
going to be saved. Let them cut anything else they want,
All right.
because they won't cut the ones with chicken wire.
So how would you suggest we convey this to Parks and Rec?
I think a written statement would be good. What does everybody else think?
Yeah.
Sure.
So we could have a motion to produce this, and it'll take a little time to write it up.
Right. I'd like to make that motion that we proceed to do something.
Okay.
Pete, can I clarify one thing? Are we saying that they don't have the staff and money for chicken wire and installation, or they just don't have the money for? I'm just trying to understand, if it was going to be a volunteer project, would volunteers be expected to come up with the chicken wire too?
I'd have to coordinate with Denise and see what resources they have and don't have.
I don't recall it. It's not terribly expensive.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
so, can I Have you had a motion made? I have
I
not
didn't
heard a
hear a
second.
second,
I'll second.
good.
Okay. And so I believe the motion is to have a refined proposal to protect desirable trees, allow the beavers to harvest other trees that are going to be removed anyway, and
And perhaps if,
and also recommending that if the beaver fail after, say, 2 months to finish the job on those trees, to
yeah, or
go
or
ahead
maybe
and
even
remove
give them a tree now or two, if they're really intent on.
and if they are felled, that
Yeah.
they be felled into towards the water and left there, basically as
right.
large woody debris.
Yep,
Okay, so is that,
One,
Sounds
just
good.
a question
So-
that I gathered from what I read, that
Yep.
that the Public Works folks are worried that a few of
Parks.
these trees at least are an immediate safety hazard.
Right.
some of them are cut all the way around, but not all the way
Or s-
through.
you
But
know,
like I say, the big cut's always towards the water. And
So
that's-
I take it we're not opposed if Public Works wants to take out 2 or
Yeah.
3 of the ones that are immediate safety hazards now. You're just
No, not at all.
suggesting that they be left down
yeah.
slow.
Put
for
them in the
beavers
water,
to
let them have them.
utilize.
That'll keep
Yeah.
them busy for a month or two.
Yeah, the beavers will utilize things that other
Yeah.
people cut. I've
Right,
done that experiment myself.
you know. And most of what they end up doing is creating a lot more valuable habitat and cover
Well,
at the
right.
same time.
You
so,
need decaying
you know,
wood
yeah.
for insects and whatnot to encourage the birds, and so there's a lot of benefits to it.
I must tell,
And we're going to have Jerry make the first cut, and I can review that and then send it to
are you
Pete.
talking
Send
about
it out to
cutting,
the whole
are you
committee.
I'm
wanting
committed
me
to the whole.
Sounds
yeah.
good.
Okay.
You're talking about
And
cutting
then-
a tree or making a stab at giving you a document?
I'm going to have you chew off the remainder of the trees since you're so in tune with
Put it
beavers.
in writing and we'll
Okay.
paste it into our
Yeah.
template
I'm kind of fond of
Okay.
beavers.
and then forward that along.
Sure,
Okay.
all right, good. I had a bunch of
I've kind
tags of
taken
it.
a stab at it too, so.
When we were maintaining, developing the grounds up at Danielson's, I had tags everywhere. Craig thought I was going crazy, said art by Northwest Beavers. We had lots of beaver wood everywhere that we were putting up there for habitat. Call our den mother, Jerry, at.
Okay, so
Enough of
I
it.
make this official. Is there any further questions on this subject, on this motion, I should say?
Thank you.
Who made the motion and who seconded
Jerry made the motion and Bob Ross seconded it.
it? Okay.
Do we vote or we just?
I'm asking if there's any further discussion.
Okay, sorry, okay.
And
Okay, excuse me.
since I hear none, I'm going to consider this passed, and Jerry
right.
will go ahead
All right, I'll
and
get that to you.
get it in an email, and
Okay.
everybody can comment on it. And then it'll go to Pete to forward. Okay.
One follow-up comment, just real brief.
Sure.
There is a product called Plant Skid. And Plant Skid, what it is it's dried, sterilized pig's blood. And what you do is you reconstitute it with water, and it's really effective in reducing browse from beaver and nutria and deer and elk.
How long?
They have an online website. They developed it to protect the nurseries over in Scandinavia.
Wow.
And it's a real effective product.
Pig's blood?
Dried, sterilized pig's blood.
Dried, sterilized.
From
I'd
well
hear the
cared
last
for
one there.
pigs. No, but it's just a product, and what's nice is it dries on the plants, and then because of the smell and because of the taste, herbivores don't
Darn.
like to eat it, and it's real effective. We used it a lot down in Kaiser and Craggett Creek.
And it did stop
Cool.
beaver?
Well, we had
We could
nutria down
use
there. We
that.
didn't have so many beaver, but the nutria didn't want to mess with it because. And what happens is when it dries, it's almost like a clear, translucent scab over the plants. And so even in areas that were subject to flooding, when flood came back down, it didn't dissolve in water after it's dried and provide, protection for all season.
Wow.
I've never seen it
cool.
used for beaver, but it's commonly used
Scandinavian.
where deer and elk forage on nursery stock and the like. Either as a liquid solution or even just blood meal powder in bags.
All right.
Okay.
Wow,
Okay.
neat. Okay.
Any
Wow.
other member reports
Okay.
and staff updates?
Yeah, I've got a pretty long list. I'll try to make it through it pretty quick here, though.
Talk fast, my dinner's getting cold.
1 second. Okay, so, as I said, interviews for NRC openings will be at the next meeting. The deadline for applications for our 2 vacant positions is February 3rd. Jerry's already turned in his application. We just have to wait till February 3rd for the others. Our 2 other applicants are Ginger Redlinger and Colleen Weiss. And I've got their applications, and I can send those around for you to look at, because we'll all be looking at them together. Staff update on city projects on the Blue Heron site. The first Planning Commission hearing for the master plan is scheduled for April 21st. Before then, there'll be a lot of other opportunities to get involved. Right now, they're trying to focus on raising regional awareness about the planning process. So there is a celebration event on February 6th at the Keen Store in Portland. So please attend if you can. It's kind of it's up there at the Keen Store, and they're really going to be.
Where's that at?
The Keen Store is in downtown Portland. Yeah.
The Blue Heron
Yeah.
thing is going to be at the King Store in Portland.
They're trying to raise regional awareness.
Okay.
Yep. So they're doing a lot of local stuff too. They've doing about 30 community conversation meetings up to now, and they're going to have these others
That
coming up.
reminds me, the
Yeah.
executive board of the Clackamas River Basin Council wants to get a presentation again on the
Okay.
Blue Heron.
Yeah, and doing the site tours again. Yeah. So
I
just
don't know if
contact Kelly.
They weren't asking for site tours so much as maybe a presentation.
Oh, presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be Kelly again?
Yeah, talk to Kelly Moosberger to get that set up. Yep. So they're really in the process of building champions, is the way they're describing it, and they're getting comments and putting them up on the website, and they've developed a portable easel with everybody's comments hanging off of it, which is on display in the planning department, but they take that with them to all their meetings. So that's a brief update on that.
Pete, is there any news on potential buyers for the site? I mean, anything
Well,
you can share?
there is an offer in from a Portland developer, and that he's.
This isn't the one that expired?
No,
or-
that was California, and I wish I could remember the name.
It doesn't matter at this
Yeah,
point.
Sure.
there is an offer, and he's got a longer deadline that coincides a little better with the planning horizon.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a local. Well, I want to say local. I'd say Northwestern developer who's looked at the site in more detail and understands the challenges. And that's all up on the website too, rediscoverthefalls.com. So, as I said, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or the NPDES permit that the city holds, is up for review. We're implementing a process for updating our stormwater design manual and grading standards. Martin Montalvo, who gave a presentation to us about the storm pond and public works maintenance, is the project manager for that, along
So describe that a little fuller,
Yeah.
what that means they're covering.
Brown and Caldwell, who presented to us, is writing the manual, and they will be producing a draft. January, February, March, April, May. Final draft will be May. The first work session that they're having with staff to look at what they've done will be coming up January 22nd, and we haven't seen it yet. So I can bring the draft before the committee at some
That
point.
would be good.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're probably going to be recommending things such as fall per,
Low impact development
Yeah.
standards, various other things that they have to show compliance with, such as
that's
monitoring
managing-
on private facilities that drain into city facilities as a new requirement.
Yeah, so that's managing
Yeah.
a natural resource, basically.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that should be something we look at.
Yes, yep. So that's something you want to bug me about, and I need to keep you abreast of. Gail Norton in our water quality department is also heavily involved in this as a project manager. I don't think I got her last name right, sorry. South End Concept Plan, I have a planning commission meeting Monday night, January 13th. So it'll be the third hearing for the planning commission. We have a letter from Metro stating that the plan substantially complies with Metro Title 11, which is planning for new urban areas, and so you have to have a complete community plan and meet a certain density requirement within your urban growth boundary. We don't meet the strict numeric density standard for the 2002 expansion area, but we are substantially complying with the density requirements of Metro.
I understand there was exceptions they pleaded, like lots of parkland adjacent to metro land.
Yeah, it was,
things like
I mean,
that.
our case for substantial compliance was based in, first and foremost, the values and core values coming out of the public involvement process to try to keep things as low density as we could, given metro requirements.
Right.
Also, adjacency to Kenema Bluffs, and the need to transition density to a lower density adjacent to the rural reserve areas outside the UGB. I think that made a compelling case. There was no argument for Metro on that. So we're good. Bearing in mind that it will take a long, long time for the area to fully urbanize. That was good news. So we're presenting that to the Planning Commission. I don't know if we'll get a recommendation from the Planning Commission on Monday, but if not, then we'll get one soon. We'll be presenting the plan preliminarily to the City Commission on January 15th, because we've already noticed that hearing. We have to, but they won't be making a decision. We'll be continuing the City Commission hearing till February 5th, and presenting our full findings to the City Commission on February 5th, looks like. So it's finally coalescing, but it's taking longer than we thought, which inevitably is the case. I submitted our updated Tree City USA application 2 weeks ago to Oregon Department of Forestry, and they accepted it. They're reviewing it, and they will be making submitting that to the Arbor Day Foundation right about now, mid-January. So we should hear back by mid-February whether we are good again. And I think we can qualify for a growth award this year based on the updated street tree list and based on the fact that we have an updated public works specification for a wider planter strip on all our streets of 5 feet. It's actually 5.5 feet, so we're no longer counting the curb, which is what they used to do. So we actually get dirt, which you can plant something in. So that's good. And then
What's a growth award?
a growth award is awarded to cities that that exceed their previous year's per capita expenditure on tree maintenance
Okay.
and management, and you are allowed to count tree permits and replacement permits that you've issued over the years.
Does that include,
So that's a significant
yeah,
expense.
does that
Is this
include park
Yeah.
planting?
Anything that the city does, including parks, planting, public works, replanting projects, and those sorts of things, and management and maintenance counts towards this minimum requirement of $2 per capita. And last year we met at $5 per capita, and this year, because we included all of the private street tree permits and valuated those at $290 per tree estimate, maybe low, maybe high, it came to $10 per capita. Now, you can throw that number out and just say, well, we're not going to count private street tree permits in our analysis, and it would probably put you back down right where we were last year, right around $4 to $5.
As long as they accept that
Yeah.
expenditure, that's fine.
But that is a prerequisite for a growth award, is that you exceed the previous year's expenditure.
And what do you
Yeah,
get
so-
for a growth
Yeah.
award? What is your reward? That's my question. Is it
You get a little, you
recognition
get
or
the
something?
recommendation, you get grant funding potential that you didn't get previously.
I see.
So to support your Arbor Day activity, there's a grant, a very simple grant application to get $500 to support an Arbor Day planting activity, for example,
Well, that's-
which is a growth, if you get growth award.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's $500. So
Yeah, it's $500 and
Yeah.
support your Arbor Day activity
Yeah.
in some way.
Yeah.
So that's an example. And then if we want to buy more signs to publicize the fact that we are Tree City USA, then we have to pay for them. So, they're $30 a piece, and then you got to have Public Works go out and mount them. We've only got 2 right now, so one over the Malala Avenue near O.C. Point, and the other one as you go up Singer Hill. But there are many more gateways to the city. And I think this is a publicity thing, but it also it makes people realize that we take the job of maintaining trees seriously in the public right of way.
Is Tree City USA canopy driven? Probably is.
Well,
Or is it?
there are many things that you can do to, as part of being Tree City USA, it's an ongoing program. So if you haven't done an urban forestry plan, and that's something on
Okay.
your work plan for a year, that's obviously a new project that you do as part of Tree City USA, and they can help you with that. It's an obvious thing that we haven't done in the city, is to concentrate and select a neighborhood to inventory the canopy, and then from that grow out. But there are several ways to do that, and they really heavily emphasize partnerships as well. So
Is woody
Friends of
volume
Trees,
important to them?
Clackamas
Woody
County.
volume, meaning sequestration, carbon sequestration, is that important to them? Or
Well, I
becoming
think that,
important?
yeah, I'm certainly, I'm not sure that they talk about carbon sequestration specifically, but it's one of the many benefits that comes with an enhanced canopy. I think they really are looking at improving public awareness of the value of trees in the public realm, and they have a very broad mandate there.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah.
I've been
So, in that vein, on Tuesday night, I have a meeting with Berkeley Hills Neighborhood Association in collaboration with Friends of Trees and Clackamas Soil and Water District, Eric Carr. We're looking to partner on a volunteer tree planting project, and the reason that we thought we'd approach Berkeley Hills Neighborhood Association first is because their neighborhood association boundaries represents a fairly narrow strip that connects the Singer Creek watershed with the Newell Creek watershed, and potentially by enhancing the street tree canopy in that location, you can create more of a canopy connection between those existing natural areas.
Good
And this
idea.
was Eric Carr's idea.
it's a good one.
It's
It's
a
a good
good
idea.
one.
Good idea.
And Friends of Trees is just chomping at the bit to expand their program beyond Portland, and has been very supportive of our initiatives. I think this is a good year to do it because we've accumulated about $13,000 in our tree mitigation bank from street tree permitting where it hasn't made sense for them to replant a tree, but they can pay fee in lieu, which is and so we wanted to leverage that money exclusively for replanting, and this is a good program to do it. Yeah.
Pete,
Yeah.
the city does not have an urban forester,
No.
No.
so is there some flexibility of where the funds in that 13,000, where the plants could be located? I guess what I'm trying to say is it's a pretty
Yeah.
significant chunk of change.
It
It
is,
seems
yeah.
like
Well, it
Depends-
goes.
We haven't really
Goes
decided
fast.
how that money should be expended yet. Yeah.
boy, that seems
Yeah.
like something that we might have some ideas about.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. We have set up an account 3 years ago when we started collecting mitigation fees, fee in lieu, and the money's going in, and then there's a separate account set up for how the money's expended, but we haven't decided how to do that yet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the things that struck me is needing to find a new parks manager to replace Larry Potter as someone with natural area management experience and knowledge. I think the city would really benefit from that, and I think it could pretty easily be done. But
Yeah, I agree.
Is there an intention to replace that function?
I don't know. I don't know the. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not involved in that at all.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a great.
Oh, I agree with what
recommendation.
Brian's saying. It would be really nice to have somebody that had a background in that
Yeah.
area. Since all this is getting more sophisticated all the time.
yeah.
Yeah, and you know, they would be focused exclusively on that, not
Well,
not necessarily planning on something else. But okay, so on to the other things. I was talking about the code updates. There's going to be a legislative update to revise the code. These are primarily housekeeping to improve the existing non-natural resource-related codes, with the exception of the Heritage Tree Code that we already recommended. We're not changing Chapter 1208, which is the Public and Street Tree Code. We're not planning to change 1741, which is the current tree protection code for development review. And we're not planning to do anything to Chapter 1749, which is the Title 3 and 13 Natural Resources Overlay District.
What about water resource overlay?
That is the Natural
That is
Resources
it,
Overlay
okay.
District at this point.
You're not intending to change it, or you are?
We're not intending to change it right now. We've accumulated a pretty significant list of code changes that we do intend to look at.
Wow.
And the timeline for that, we have a draft legislative adoption schedule. We're hoping to compile red lines by the end of January and submit those to the Planning Commission in March. There would be at least two hearings at the Planning Commission level, a work session at the Planning Commission, City Commission work sessions, at least two of those in May and June. City Commission hearings starting in June 18th and July 2nd, with a view towards adopting an effective code in August 1st of this year. And then we always write a 6-month update date certain in, which would be out to February 9th, 2015. So there's an opportunity here to look at some of the codes that I mentioned for the Natural Resources Committee. We would like the NRC and PRAC's feedback on the open space and trail dedication requirements that would be new in Chapter 12.04, which is our public and streets section. And the other sections that I mentioned, we would need you to understand how those codes work better before we propose redlining them. Yeah. And we need to do that again. On to grant opportunities. I forwarded an email to you guys this evening, so you won't have seen it yet, but it is a listing of various grant opportunities that are upcoming. In particular, the Metro Nature in the Neighborhoods Conservation Education Grants deadline is right around the corner. It's a simple application. It's January 14th.
I believe that one's just to notify them of the intent to,
Okay.
Intent to apply.
yeah, and then,
Krista Gardner is the contact. Then the other ones are the Community Watershed Stewardship Program, providing up to $10,000. Those pre-applications are due in February And there are a couple of multnomah programs that wouldn't be eligible down here. The Gray Family Foundation Environmental Education Program grant applications are due February 1st, 2014.
Where are they from?
They seek to encourage a strong local land ethic, sustainable communities, and stewardship of the natural environment by citizens throughout Oregon. The Gray Family Foundation, I'm not sure where they're
This
out
is John
of.
Gray, by chance?
I don't know.
Probably.
Is committed to institutionalizing a series of age-appropriate experiences that build a sense of place and responsibility towards Oregon and the region. And their website is www.grayff.org.
Oh.
And then there are the EPA environmental education grant programs, which are proposals are due February 4th. And these are pretty significant programs that total $2.7 million with awards of $75,000 to $200,000.
Yeah.
So that's national.
That's national.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
strikes me that some of those could be combined to match each other and so on,
Right.
along with community input. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, so this email you're going to have in your inboxes.
Okay.
Land use files, I've got a list of land use files that we're going through right now. A lot of them are minor partitions and commercial stuff, some conditional use applications for assisted living facilities and men's center. We have 2 zone changes from R10 to R6 in Woodlawn Avenue and Central Point. We have 2 subdivision proposals, one called Lindsay Ann Estates on Leland Road, which was a resubmittal of an application that expired in 2006. And a subdivision on Barlow Place. I don't have any natural resource applications since the last update. We had talked to you about a lot of record on Illyria Street, where the Pearl Street crosses and goes around and there's a lot of record on that. That's still incomplete because of geologic and the lot of record itself, we're not sure how the lot was created, whether it was created legally. So we've asked for further documentation on that.
I just recalled there's
Yeah.
an issue down in Kenema. There was a number of lots that were actually platted in 1865.
Oh, yeah.
And it's right down a creek, which should be a natural resource area, but it's been plotted. So it would be interesting to get an update on that, what the status of that is. If
Right.
if
Is
if
this
that's
where
just
the stone wall comes down and crosses the road in Kenema? Is there?
it's real close to Paul Edgar's house.
Yeah.
We know where that is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure about the wall.
right.
There's below there's a stone wall right along the road.
Yeah, I mean, what we have mapped from the
Coffee Creek.
Shapiro inventory is very old, and the springs pop up there, and the groundwater is really high, so things really get wet.
Yeah, and
In areas,
what has priority
Coffee
here?
Creek,
You know,
yeah.
the ancient, 150-year-old lots are more modern.
Yeah, whenever we're looking at Kenema, we're dealing with that old plat that was just laid on a hillside,
Yeah, and it's
is an
not a
active
flat piece of
landslide
ground.
zone.
Yeah,
So you've got the natural resource overlay as well as the geologic hazard overlay, and the
Right.
geologic hazard overlay actually restricts density. If there's contiguous lots under same ownership, so you may have 4 tax lots, but if they're all owned by the same person, and they're all over 25% slope or 35% slope, their density is severely restricted to like
Yeah,
one
the-
house.
as I understand, the top of the property isn't very steep, but then it goes boom straight
Right.
down.
And it's, whether it's the toe or crest of those slopes, we look very hard at that from
Yeah,
a geologic perspective.
Yeah,
Natural resources aspect of that is a concurrent application, but it's going to be a significant amount of analysis and impact
Yeah.
analysis and
Yeah,
mitigation
I
plan.
think it would be of interest to the committee to see how that analysis is going on and what state it's at. And
It'd be
Yeah.
nice to have a field trip if possible.
In Kenema?
it could be
Yeah.
done. It's private property, but
I think the Great Oregon Watershed
Yeah.
Council is already involved.
Yeah,
in this
I'm sure
one,
they
and I understand that that one or two of the landowners have shown some interest in a possible conservation easement, and there's some discussion going on that.
Yeah,
that's good.
they'll have to do
That
some
would be
ground
another angle.
truthing, and they would have to actually identify the true location of the resources there, and if they meet wetland criteria in addition to identifying where the stream channel is, then the wetland boundary and the buffer is associated with what's ground truth on site, and that's what they base the analysis on.
yeah,
So
I wouldn't be surprised if there wouldn't be some wetlands, but I do not know how
Yeah.
extensive.
Yeah, you got to kind of turn that wetland layer on when you're on OC map
Yeah.
online. You want to turn the wetland layer on independent of the natural resources layer in order to see what the Shapiro inventory and the state
Yeah.
wetland inventory show. Yeah, but they're going to be off a few few feet. Sometimes as much as 50 feet. Yeah.
Yeah, and well,
Okay.
anyway, if we could get a report at some point, that would be of interest.
Yeah. Okay.
And
It would be. Are there photographs, stock photographs of the site? Even up in a tour. It'd be nice to match some of the content of the presentation. Any available photographs, just to.
We have 15 years of aerial photographs, but it's pretty indistinct. It's
Yeah, it's
not.
wooded.
No.
that's all. You just see
you'd
the
have to-
treetops.
Yeah, you wouldn't see much. I'm not sure if we have any-
LiDAR might be better.
The LiDAR data is probably better
Yeah,
because you'll actually see how things drain.
yeah, and if that steep portion is unstable, and for all we know, the upper portion could be unstable too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Coffee Creek, and it's a year-round creek.
Right, and there's an old Works Progress Administration wall, I think, associated with that stream system, which
Right,
is
the
part
one
of the
that's just on the
historic
edge of South End?
inventory.
The one that's just on the edge of South End.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, there's
yeah.
the real nice stone walls along the road going uphill there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just like the ones in the gorge, actually.
Okay.
So anyway, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's my update.
Very interesting.
Future agenda items.
okay. We got members interview for at least an hour, and then our goal project. And if we get a report on what we just talked about, we've got a meeting set up pretty
Yeah.
well.
Okay.
Pete, if we wanted to pursue that thing about the allocating the 13,000 in mitigation funds, how would we count? How would there be like a form? I'm not sure, how to proceed. If we
Yeah.
wanted to provide input or what
Well-
the process is or anything.
I mean, I think if you put your heads together and come up with some recommendations as to how you think that money should be spent, we can certainly look at that at one of our upcoming meetings.
Whose fund is that? Under which department does it reside?
It's a line item that the
Okay.
finance department tracks. We collect it through planning
Okay.
when we issue a street tree permit to somebody and they pay fee in lieu. So it's essentially our department that can control it.
Okay.
Um,
But it's not crucial to your department function.
No,
So, in
it's-
other words,
Yeah.
would there be
Well,
opposition
for
to
trees, that's
suggestions?
Right, and my idea was to try to leverage it to the maximum extent practicable through some sort of a partnership with Friends and Trees, because they can get
It's
bulk and
already
wholesale.
dedicated to tree planting, isn't it?
It does have to be used for tree planting.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's your
Yeah.
criteria. If you want to make recommendations,
Well,
Come
or
up with
protecting
recommendations
trees
for
and
us.
protecting trees in Clackamas Cove?
why?
Or feeding beaver.
I don't know, all those beavers sound pretty hungry.
At my place, we just have willow shrubs, and they mow them every 2 or 3 years, and they're happy.
Could it
We
be
actually have a
used,
den on our property now.
could it be used to mitigate this immediate issue? Getting parks, the material to cover the trees? I'm just talking concept here. Seems like-
Possibly,
Well, codlins are trees.
but that's sort of
Huh?
yeah, maybe.
Well,
It would be protecting trees rather than planting trees.
Yeah,
I could
it's
get some
protecting rather
volunteers
than
to do the
planting.
work, I can guarantee you that, the junior ROTC.
And, you know, I would just caution, if we're going to move ahead with a partnership with Friends of Trees this year, I would like to have something to match what
Right.
they do.
You need it.
Right.
And so that's,
Right.
you know,
I can't imagine a roll of wire being more than $200 for probably a 500-foot roll.
Well,
You know,
Yeah, and
chicken
then-
wire.
there'd be a bunch of smaller rolls, so.
Well,
and we have to
I
have
agree, I agree,
volunteers
I
that are
agree.
Just go
willing
over
to
to
do the
Home
work
Depot.
as well.
Yeah.
I forget the price, but it's not very high.
No.
Pete, I think more than exactly the site is maybe figuring out what goals that we'd want to achieve, supplemental goals to achieve with additional plantings that wouldn't be possible with current resources, so that we could say if the money was spent, this is what we accomplished, and this is the long-term benefits. Because I think that's important, kind of for the credibility long-term.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of street trees, it can be contentious, so we want to choose the right neighborhood. We want to choose a neighborhood association who is supportive and embraces the project and says, yeah, great.
Yeah. And
We don't want
Does it
to
have
choose a
to be
neighborhood
street trees?
association where they're like, I don't want to see another street tree again. You know, we've got some
well, you
streets like that,
Yeah,
you know.
ideally, you have a,
Yeah.
2.5 or more foot width, so you
Right.
can reasonably put a good-sized tree in.
That's the other thing. If we don't necessarily want to choose neighborhoods that have just narrow planter strips, but
Yeah, I have a friend in off of Thayer, and the parking strips are like this wide, and they put in purple leaf plums, which destroyed the sidewalks.
yeah,
Oh.
I've seen
And the
those.
builder put them in, and
Yeah.
so everybody had the same problem, and it's,
Yeah.
and then everybody's liable for those sidewalks.
Yeah, right.
Does the 13,000 have to be spent on street trees or simply
Yes.
trees?
Street trees or trees in the public realm, I think. Yeah,
Okay, that's broader
yeah,
than just street
yeah.
trees then.
Yeah, ideally street trees, because we do have some pretty blank spots, but then we're pretty constrained in some parts of the city.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the pavement is what overheats the city, and
Yeah.
shading that pavement is real important.
Yeah.
So street
Yeah.
trees are good, but I wouldn't be opposed to ones in the front yard.
Yeah, you're right.
That'd still be
Yeah.
visible to the public.
Yep. If we do them in the front yard, we ask that the owner record a covenant to protect it as a public tree, and most of the time they're willing to do that. There's a
Okay.
cost of recordation,
Yeah,
but they pay for that.
and then they would be, if they did remove it, they might be paying fees in lieu of anyway. So
Right. Right.
okay,
So yeah. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. We are adjourned.
Okay. Good.